Hey there, welcome back. Tonight, we're going to explore something strange, something you've probably felt but never quite understood. That restless feeling when you're trying to fall asleep in your perfectly safe bedroom. That sudden jolt of anxiety when you hear an unexpected sound. The way your heart races when you're startled, even though nothing is actually threatening you. Your body is keeping secrets from you. Ancient secrets. Because here's the truth. While you live in the 21st century, surrounded by technology, climate control, and modern medicine, your body is still running software designed for a world that no longer exists. A world of predators in the darkness. A world where every shadow could hide danger. A world where survival meant staying alert, staying ready, staying afraid. Before you get too comfortable tonight, take a moment to like this video if you're enjoying what we do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It always fascinates me to see who's joining us from around the world. Whether you're winding down for the night or struggling through another sleepless hour. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background hum. Get settled, because tonight we're going to understand why your body still thinks you're living in the wild. And maybe, just maybe, understanding these ancient instincts will help you finally make peace with them. Think about it for a moment. You lock your doors, you set your alarm, you climb into a bed that cost more than your ancestors earned in a lifetime. You're surrounded by walls, protected by laws, insulated from the elements. You are, by every objective measure, safer than any human being who has ever lived. And yet, your body doesn't believe it. Not really. Not deep down in the places where instinct lives. That racing heart when you hear a creak in the night, that's not paranoia. That's your amygdala. A tiny, almond-shaped cluster of neurons buried deep in your brain, doing exactly what it was designed to do 50,000 years ago. It's scanning for threats. It's keeping you alive. It doesn't know about deadbolts or security systems or the statistical improbability of danger. It only knows that darkness once meant death, and stillness once meant vulnerability. And letting your guard down once meant you might never wake up. Your body still remembers a time when sleep was the most dangerous thing you could do. When closing your eyes meant becoming prey. When every sound in the darkness could be your last warning. And even though you know, intellectually, that you're safe, your body hasn't gotten the memo. It's still out there, somewhere on the African savanna, listening for footsteps in the grass. Tonight, we're going to explore why. We're going to understand the biology of your unease, the evolutionary purpose of your restlessness, and the ancient programming that keeps you awake when you desperately want to sleep. Because once you understand why your body does what it does, once you see the logic behind the anxiety, it becomes a little easier to work with it instead of against it. Let's begin. You're lying in bed, finally comfortable, eyes closed, drifting towards sleep. And then you hear it, a sound. Maybe it's the house settling, maybe it's the wind, maybe it's nothing at all. But your eyes snap open, your heart pounds, your muscles tense. And suddenly, you're wide awake, listening intently to the darkness, trying to identify a threat that probably doesn't exist. Welcome to your threat detection system, and it's working exactly as designed, just about 50,000 years too late. Deep inside your brain, nestled in the temporal lobe, sits a small structure called the amygdala. It's about the size of an almond, and it's one of the oldest parts of your brain in evolutionary terms. The amygdala doesn't think, it doesn't reason, It doesn't care about logic or statistics or the fact that you live in a safe neighborhood. Its job is singular and ancient: detect threats and react immediately. This tiny cluster of neurons is your early warning system, and it operates on a principle that kept your ancestors alive for millions of years. Better to assume danger and be wrong than to assume safety and be dead. In the language of evolutionary biology, this is called a false positive bias. Your amygdala would rather wake you up 1,000 times for nothing than let you sleep through something dangerous even once. And it's fast, incredibly fast. When you hear that unexpected sound, your amygdala processes it in about 20 milliseconds, long before your conscious mind even registers what happened. It sends signals cascading through your body. Adrenaline floods your bloodstream, your heart rate spikes, your pupils dilate, your muscles prime for action. All of this happens before you even have time to think the words, "What was that?" For your ancestors, this split-second response was the difference between life and death. Imagine sleeping in a small group on the African savannah 200,000 years ago. No walls, no doors, no weapons more sophisticated than sharpened sticks and stone. You're surrounded by predators that can see better in the dark than you can, that can smell you from miles away, that are stronger and faster and better equipped for killing. In that world, the cost of sleeping too deeply was death. The individuals who slept soundly through the night, who didn't startle at every sound, who didn't wake at the snap of a twig or the rustle of grass, those individuals didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes. They were eaten, they were attacked, they became cautionary tales whispered around fires. The ones who survived, the ones who became your ancestors, were the light sleepers, the warriors, the ones whose brains couldn't fully let go, even in rest. They were the ones whose amygdalas stayed partially active during sleep, constantly scanning the auditory environment for anything unusual, anything that didn't fit the expected pattern of nighttime sounds. And you inherited that system, every single part of it. Your amygdala doesn't know that the most dangerous thing in your bedroom is probably tripping over your shoes in the dark. It's still listening for lions. It's still preparing you to fight or run. It's still keeping you alive in a world that no longer exists. Is less than #0. 7 hash is greater than. This is why a car alarm 3 blocks away can jolt you awake, but you can sleep through the steady hum of an air conditioner. Your brain filters sounds based on whether they signal potential danger. Steady, predictable sounds are safe. They become background. But sudden, unexpected or irregular sounds trigger an immediate alert response. Your amygdala interprets them as potential threats, something breaking the pattern, something that requires investigation. The cruel irony is that this system, which kept your ancestors alive, now keeps you awake. In the modern world, you're surrounded by irregular sounds that mean nothing. Neighbors coming home late, delivery trucks, planes overhead, phones buzzing, the house creaking as it cools. Every single one of these sounds can trigger your ancient alarm system, flooding your body with stress hormones that make sleep impossible. And it gets worse when you're already stressed or anxious. Your amygdala has a direct connection to your hypothalamus, which controls your stress response system. When you're under chronic stress, your baseline level of arousal increases. Your amygdala becomes hypersensitive, like a smoke detector with a dying battery that goes off every time you make toast. It starts seeing threats everywhere, even in situations that are objectively safe. This is why anxiety and sleep problems are so often intertwined. It's not that you're broken or weak or doing something wrong. It's that your threat detection system, designed for a world of genuine physical danger, is now responding to modern stressors, work deadlines, relationship conflicts, financial worries, as if they were predators in the darkness. And it's responding the same way it always has, by keeping you awake, alert, and ready to fight or flee. Your body can't tell the difference between a lion outside your shelter and an email from your boss. Both trigger the same ancient alarm. Both flood you with the same hormones. Both make sleep feel impossible because, in the logic of evolution, if there's a threat, sleep is a luxury you can't afford. So when you lie awake at 3 in the morning, heart racing over something that objectively doesn't matter, remember this: you're not anxious because you're weak. You're anxious because you're the descendant of the most successful warriors in human history. The ones who didn't worry, who didn't startle, who didn't wake at every sound, they didn't make it. You did. Your insomnia is, in a strange way, a trophy, proof that your ancestors were vigilant enough to survive. But survival and rest are not the same thing, and your amygdala, for all its evolutionary success, has not yet learned the difference between genuine danger and the creaks of a settling house. It's still out there on the savannah, listening to the darkness, waiting for something to emerge from the shadows. And that's why, even in perfect safety, you still feel the pull of ancient fear. But your threat detection system is just the beginning of the story, because darkness itself holds its own evolutionary weight, and that's where we're headed next. Close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, just to notice. Feel how the darkness behind your eyelids changes the space around you, how the world becomes uncertain, how your other senses sharpen, reaching out to compensate for what you can no longer see. Now, open them again. That brief moment of blindness, that instinctive discomfort, that's millions of years of evolution whispering a simple truth: darkness is dangerous. For most of human history, nighttime was the most dangerous time to be alive, and your body remembers. Here's something most people don't realize about human evolution. We are daytime creatures, diurnal in biological terms. Our eyes are optimized for bright light and color vision. We have excellent depth perception and visual acuity when the sun is up, but the moment darkness falls, we become nearly helpless compared to the predators that hunted us. A lion can see roughly 6 times better in low light than a human can. A leopard, even better. Their eyes contain a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum, a mirror-like structure behind the retina that bounces light back through the photoreceptors, giving them a second chance to capture every precious photon. It's why their eyes glow when caught in firelight or moonlight. It's also why they could see you long before you could see them. Humans don't have this advantage. We traded enhanced night vision for better color discrimination and sharper daytime sight. In evolutionary terms, this was a calculated trade-off. Our ancestors were active during the day, foraging, hunting, and socializing when they could see clearly. But when the sun set, they became vulnerable. Darkness transformed them from capable hunters into potential prey. And so, for hundreds of thousands of years, sunset meant danger. It meant retreating to shelter. It meant gathering together. It meant staying alert even while resting. Because in the darkness, threats could approach unseen. A predator could be 3 feet away, and you'd have no idea until it was far too late. This is why darkness still triggers a primal unease in so many of us. It's not irrational, it's not childish. It's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, warning you that your primary sense, vision, has been compromised. When you can't see, your brain interprets this as vulnerability, and vulnerability, in evolutionary terms, meant death. The fear of darkness even has a name, nyctophobia, but calling it a phobia almost misses the point. What we call fear of the dark is really just an amplified version of a completely normal, adaptive response. It's your ancient brain recognizing that you're at a disadvantage, that you're exposed, that you're operating with limited information in an environment where information means survival. Children understand this instinctively. When a child says they're afraid of the dark, they're not being irrational. They're responding to the same evolutionary programming that kept your ancestors alive. Their amygdala is telling them, correctly, that darkness obscures threats, that monsters, whether real or imagined, can hide in shadows. And so they resist bedtime. They ask for nightlights. They want doors left open. They're seeking what humans have always sought in darkness, light, and the safety it provides. The discovery of fire changed everything, or at least it should have. Somewhere between 300,000 and 1 million years ago, depending on which archaeological evidence you trust, humans learned to control fire. And with that single innovation, they pushed back the darkness. They created a circle of light and warmth and safety. They could see approaching predators. They could gather together. They could extend their useful hours beyond sunset. Fire became the center of human social life. Stories were told around it. Food was cooked over it. Communities formed in its glow. And most importantly, it made sleep possible. With fire burning, humans could let their guard down, at least partially, knowing that its light would reveal anything creeping close, and its heat would deter most animals from approaching. But even fire couldn't eliminate the fear, because fire goes out. Fire needs tending. Fire creates dancing shadows that can look like movement, like shapes, like threats. And beyond the circle of firelight, the darkness remained absolute and unknowable. Your ancestors could see a few feet into the night, and beyond that, nothing, just the sounds of the wild, the calls of animals, the rustling of unseen things moving through the darkness. This is why, even today, with electric lights and locked doors and climate-controlled homes, we still feel uneasy in the dark. Your conscious mind knows you're safe. But your unconscious mind, the ancient parts of your brain that kept your ancestors alive, doesn't trust it. It remembers when darkness meant danger, when shadows could move, when the night belonged to creatures that wanted to eat you. And it's not just about fear. Darkness affects your body in measurable physical ways. When light levels drop, your brain begins producing melatonin, a hormone that makes you feel drowsy and prepares your body for sleep. This is your circadian rhythm at work, responding to the most reliable environmental cue humans have ever known: the rising and setting of the Sunday. But here's the problem. Your melatonin system evolved in a world where darkness was total and unavoidable. Once the sun set, there was no way to create daylight-level illumination. You had fire, which produces warm orange light that doesn't suppress melatonin production very much. And you had moonlight, which is so dim it barely registers. Modern life has shattered this ancient pattern. You're surrounded by bright lights at all hours. Your phone screen blasts blue light directly into your eyes at midnight. Your bedroom might never achieve true darkness because of streetlights, digital clocks, and the glow of standby indicators on electronics. Your brain is receiving mixed signals. The clock says it's time to sleep, but your eyes are telling your brain it's still daytime. So your melatonin production gets suppressed, your circadian rhythm drifts, and you lie awake in a kind of biological confusion, your body unsure whether it should be alert or asleep, active or resting. You've created artificial daylight, which is an incredible achievement, but your ancient brain interprets it as danger, as a reason to stay awake, as a signal that something is wrong. And when you finally do turn off the lights, when darkness returns, that old unease creeps back in. Not because you're afraid of the dark exactly, but because your body remembers what darkness meant. Vulnerability, uncertainty, the need for vigilance. Even in perfect safety, even surrounded by walls and locks and the accumulated protection of civilization, that ancient whisper remains. The darkness doesn't just make you afraid, it makes you alert. And alertness, while useful for survival, is the enemy of sleep. But fear of the dark is only part of the equation, because your body has another defense system, one that activates specifically in those vulnerable moments right before you lose consciousness, and that's where we turn next. You're finally relaxed. Your breathing has slowed, your muscles have released their tension. You can feel yourself drifting, that pleasant sensation of letting go, of sliding toward unconsciousness. And then, suddenly, your mind snaps back to alertness. A thought intrudes, a worry surfaces, your heart rate picks up slightly, and just like that, you're awake again, frustrated, wondering why your brain won't just let you sleep. This isn't insomnia. This isn't anxiety. This is your body performing one final safety check before it does the most dangerous thing it can do: surrender consciousness. Sleep is a biological paradox. Every animal needs it. Every human craves it. It's essential for memory consolidation, immune function, cellular repair, and emotional regulation. Without sleep, you die. Lab rats, deprived of sleep, survive only about 2 to 3 weeks before their bodies shut down completely. Sleep is not optional. It's as necessary as food or water. And yet, sleep is also profoundly dangerous. When you sleep, you lose awareness of your environment. You can't respond to threats. You can't defend yourself. You become, in evolutionary terms, completely vulnerable. A sleeping animal is an easy target. A sleeping human, even more so. This is the dilemma your ancestors faced every single night. They needed sleep to survive, but sleep itself could get them killed. And so the brain evolved a compromise, a system of hypervigilance that activates specifically during the transition from wakefulness to sleep. Your brain performs a threat assessment. It scans the environment one last time. It asks a fundamental question: is it safe enough to let go? And if the answer is anything less than yes, if there's any uncertainty, any unresolved threat, any reason to stay alert, your brain will pull you back from the edge of sleep. It will generate a thought, a worry, a sensation, anything to keep you conscious just a little bit longer. Because in the ancestral environment, falling asleep when it wasn't safe meant you might never wake up. This is why racing thoughts happen most often right before sleep. Your mind suddenly fixates on tomorrow's meeting, on something you said 3 years ago, on whether you locked the front door. These thoughts feel random, intrusive, impossible to control. But they're not random. They're your brain's way of saying, wait, hold on, we haven't resolved this yet. We can't sleep until we know it's safe. The biological mechanism behind this involves cortisol, often called the stress hormone, though that name doesn't quite capture its complexity. Cortisol is part of your body's alarm system. It rises in response to perceived threats, mobilizing energy and sharpening focus. In a healthy circadian rhythm, cortisol levels should be lowest at night, allowing melatonin to rise and usher you into sleep. But when your brain detects something unresolved, something potentially threatening, it triggers a small cortisol spike. Not enough to make you fully alert, but enough to prevent you from fully relaxing. Your body stays in a state of low-level arousal, ready to respond if needed. You hover in that frustrating space between wakefulness and sleep, unable to commit to either. For your ancestors, this made perfect sense. Imagine trying to sleep while hearing unusual sounds in the distance, or after a conflict with another member of your group, or when you weren't sure if predators were nearby. Your brain wouldn't let you sleep deeply until these uncertainties were resolved. It kept you in a state of partial awareness, ready to wake fully at the first sign of real danger. This is also why humans evolved to sleep in groups. When you're alone, the burden of vigilance falls entirely on you. Your brain can never fully relax because there's no one else watching, no backup system, no safety net. But when you sleep near others, the responsibility is shared. While you sleep, others remain partially aware. And when they sleep, you take your turn. It's called the sentinel effect, and it allowed our ancestors to achieve deeper, more restorative sleep than they ever could alone. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans rarely slept in isolation. They clustered together in caves, in temporary shelters, around fires. This wasn't just for warmth or social bonding. It was a survival strategy. A group of sleepers is harder to surprise than an individual. There are more eyes, more ears, more chances to detect a threat before it becomes lethal. Even the way humans cycle through sleep stages reflects this need for vigilance. You don't fall into deep sleep immediately and stay there all night. Instead, you cycle through stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, and back again. Each cycle lasts roughly 90 minutes, and you complete about 4 to 6 cycles per night. During light sleep, your brain remains somewhat responsive to the environment. Loud sounds or unusual stimuli can wake you easily. This is your brain maintaining a baseline level of awareness, keeping one foot in consciousness just in case. Only once your brain determines that the environment has remained safe through multiple cycles does it allow you to sink into deeper stages of sleep where waking becomes more difficult. This cycling pattern meant that ancestral humans were never completely unconscious for long periods. Every 90 minutes or so, they'd rise closer to wakefulness, perform an unconscious check of their surroundings, and either return to deeper sleep or wake up if something had changed. It's why you sometimes wake briefly in the night for no apparent reason. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, checking in, making sure everything is still safe, before allowing you to drift back down. But in the modern world, this system backfires. You live in environments that are objectively safe but feel uncertain. You have worries that your brain interprets as threats even though they're not physical dangers. You sleep alone in separate rooms, separate homes, deprived of the social proximity that once signaled safety. Your brain looks around for the group, for the fire, for the familiar sounds of other people breathing nearby, and finds nothing. Just silence. Just isolation. Just you. And so, it keeps you partially awake. It generates anxiety. It prevents you from fully letting go. Not because you're broken, but because you're alone in a way humans were never meant to be. Your hypervigilance before sleep isn't a disorder. It's an ancient protective mechanism trying to function in a world it wasn't designed for. This is why you might sleep better with a partner or a pet, or even just white noise that mimics the ambient sounds of other people nearby. Your brain is looking for cues that you're not alone, that someone else is sharing the burden of vigilance, that it's safe to fully surrender to sleep. Without those cues, it hesitates, it holds back. It keeps you hovering at the edge of consciousness, just in case. The cruel irony is that the very system designed to protect you from danger now keeps you from the rest you desperately need. Your hypervigilance, once a life-saving adaptation, has become the thing standing between you and sleep. But this safety system isn't the only ancient rhythm your body follows, because long before alarm clocks and artificial light, there was another force governing when you slept and woke, and understanding it might be the key to finally working with your body instead of against it. You wake up naturally on a Saturday morning, no alarm, just your body deciding it's time to open your eyes. The room is filled with soft daylight. You feel rested, alert, ready to start the day. Now compare that to a weekday morning when your alarm screams you awake in complete darkness. Your room is still black. Your body feels heavy, confused, resistant. You hit snooze 3 times before finally dragging yourself out of bed, wondering why mornings feel like punishment. The difference isn't willpower. It's not laziness. It's your circadian rhythm, and it's furious that you're ignoring it. Deep inside your brain, in a tiny region of the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, sits your body's master clock. It's a cluster of about 20,000 neurons, each one oscillating in a roughly 24-hour cycle. These neurons control when you feel alert and when you feel sleepy. They regulate your body temperature, your hormone production, your metabolism, even your immune function. Everything in your body runs on a schedule, and this tiny structure keeps time. But here's the fascinating part. Your circadian clock doesn't run on exactly 24 hours. For most people, the natural cycle is slightly longer, somewhere between 24 hours and 15 minutes to 24 hours and 30 minutes. Left to its own devices, without any external cues, your sleep schedule would drift later and later each day. You'd go to bed a little later, wake up a little later, slowly rotating around the clock like someone trying to live on Mars, where days last 24 hours and 39 minutes. So, why doesn't this happen? Why do you roughly stay in sync with the Earth's rotation? Because every morning your circadian clock resets itself using the most reliable environmental signal that has ever existed: sunlight. When light enters your eyes, it travels along the optic nerve to your suprachiasmatic nucleus. Specialized cells in your retina, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, detect light, particularly blue wavelengths, and send signals directly to your master clock. This light exposure tells your brain, this is morning, this is the beginning of the day, reset the timer. In response, your brain suppresses melatonin production. Melatonin is the hormone that makes you feel drowsy and prepares your body for sleep. During the day, melatonin levels remain low, keeping you alert and active. But as evening approaches and light levels drop, your pineal gland begins releasing melatonin into your bloodstream. Over the course of a few hours, melatonin levels rise, signaling to every cell in your body that night is coming and it's time to prepare for rest. This system evolved over millions of years in an environment where light and darkness followed a completely predictable pattern. The sun rose, the sun set. There was no artificial light bright enough to confuse the system. The only illumination after dark came from fire and moonlight, both of which produce warm, orange and red wavelengths that don't suppress melatonin very much. Your circadian rhythm didn't need to be complicated because the environmental cues were consistent. Every morning, bright blue-rich sunlight told your body to wake up. Every evening, the gradual dimming of natural light told your body to wind down. Your ancestors' sleep schedules were synchronized not with clocks or calendars, but with the rotation of the earth itself. And then humans invented artificial light. First candles, then gas lamps, then incandescent bulbs, then fluorescent tubes, then LEDs. Each innovation pushed back the darkness a little further. Each one gave humans more control over their environment, and each one confused the circadian system a little bit more. Modern LED lights and screens emit large amounts of blue wavelength light, the exact wavelength that your intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells are most sensitive to. When you look at your phone before bed, your brain receives the same signal it would from morning sunlight. It's daytime, stay alert. Suppress melatonin, don't prepare for sleep. The research on this is unambiguous. Studies show that just 2 hours of evening exposure to bright screens can suppress melatonin production by about 22% and delay its onset by roughly 90 minutes. That means you feel alert when you should feel drowsy, and your body doesn't begin preparing for sleep until much later than it naturally would. But the problem isn't just screens, it's the entire structure of modern life. You wake up before sunrise and commute to work in artificial light. You spend your day indoors under fluorescent bulbs that provide nowhere near the intensity of natural sunlight. A bright, sunny day delivers about 10,000 lux at eye level. Your office lighting probably delivers about 500. Your brain never receives a strong enough daytime signal. Then, in the evening, you're exposed to bright indoor lighting and screens right up until bedtime. Your brain receives a strong nighttime wake signal. The result is a circadian rhythm that's simultaneously understimulated during the day and overstimulated at night. Your master clock loses its clear boundaries. It doesn't know when day ends and night begins. This is called circadian misalignment, and it's epidemic in modern society. Your internal clock says one time, but your alarm clock, your work schedule, your social obligations demand another. You're constantly jet-lagged in your own time zone, forcing your body to operate on a schedule it wasn't designed for. And your body fights back. When your circadian rhythm is disrupted, everything suffers. Your sleep quality deteriorates. Your metabolism becomes less efficient, increasing your risk for weight gain and diabetes. Your immune system weakens, your mood destabilizes, even your cognitive function declines. Studies of shift workers who experience chronic circadian disruption show increased rates of cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, and mental health disorders. This isn't because shift work is inherently stressful, though it often is. It's because forcing your body to be awake when your circadian rhythm says you should be asleep creates a fundamental biological conflict. Every system in your body is trying to prepare for rest while you demand it stay active. It's like trying to drive a car with the parking brake engaged. The engine still runs, but everything works harder, wears down faster, and eventually something breaks. Your ancestors didn't have this problem. Their circadian rhythms were naturally synchronized with the environment. They woke with the sun, worked during daylight, and wound down as darkness fell. There was no need for sleep, hygiene, advice, or circadian rhythm optimization because the environment itself provided perfect cues. But you live in a world where the sun's schedule and your schedule have nothing to do with each other. You can be awake at any hour. You can flood your environment with light whenever you choose. You've conquered darkness. which is an extraordinary achievement. But your circadian rhythm, evolved over millions of years to follow the sun, has no idea what to make of a world where day and night have become optional. So it flounders. It receives conflicting signals, it tries to adjust but never quite succeeds. And you feel it as exhaustion during the day and restlessness at night, as difficulty falling asleep and difficulty waking up, as a constant sense of being slightly out of sync with your own body. You're not running on sun time anymore. You're running on screen time. And your ancient clock is struggling to keep up. But light isn't the only environmental signal your body uses to time its rest, because temperature plays an equally ancient role in determining when your body feels ready to sleep, and understanding that might explain why your bedroom never feels quite right. You've probably experienced this. You're lying in bed, exhausted, desperate for sleep, but you're too warm. You kick off the blanket. Now you're too cold. You pull it back on. Too warm again. You adjust the thermostat. You flip the pillow to the cool side. You stick one leg out from under the covers in a desperate compromise. And through all of this, sleep remains frustratingly out of reach. This isn't just discomfort. This is your body trying to initiate a process that has been essential to sleep for as long as warm-blooded animals have existed, and you're accidentally interfering with it. Sleep and body temperature are deeply connected, linked by millions of years of evolution. Fall asleep. Your core body temperature needs to drop by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. This isn't a minor detail. It's a biological requirement. Your brain will not fully initiate sleep until it detects this temperature decline. It's looking for a specific signal, a cooling pattern that tells it the environment is safe and the conditions are right for rest. This temperature drop begins about 2 hours before you typically fall asleep. Your hypothalamus, the same region of your brain that houses your circadian clock, starts redirecting blood flow from your core to your extremities. Blood vessels in your hands and feet dilate, a process called vasodilation, allowing more warm blood to flow to the surface of your skin, where heat can radiate away into the surrounding air. This is why your hands and feet often feel warmer right before sleep, even though your core temperature is dropping. Your body is essentially using your extremities as radiators, dumping excess heat to prepare for the cooler internal state that sleep requires. If you've ever noticed that you fall asleep more easily when your feet are warm, this is why. Warm extremities mean your body is successfully dissipating heat. They're a sign that the cooling process is working. For your ancestors, this system was perfectly calibrated to the natural environment. As the sun set, ambient temperatures dropped, the air cooled, the ground released the heat it had absorbed during the day. Your ancestors' bodies detected this environmental cooling and initiated their own internal temperature drop in response. The external signal and the internal process worked together, reinforcing each other, creating ideal conditions for sleep. And there was another factor: shelter. The caves, overhangs, and simple structures where early humans slept were generally cooler than the surrounding environment. Stone and earth retain coolness. Air circulation was limited. These spaces offered protection not just from predators, but from temperature extremes. They created a stable, slightly cool microenvironment that supported the body's natural temperature decline. But in the modern world, you control your temperature completely. You heat your home in winter, you cool it in summer. You can maintain any temperature you want, any time you want. And often, you choose temperatures that feel comfortable when you're awake and active. Temperatures around 70 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit for most people. The problem is, that's too warm for optimal sleep. Research consistently shows that the ideal bedroom temperature for sleep is between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. That might sound cold, uncomfortably so if you're sitting at a desk or watching television. But when you're lying down, covered with blankets, and your body is trying to cool itself, that temperature range is exactly what your biology is looking for. When your bedroom is too warm, your body struggles to dissipate heat efficiently. Your core temperature can't drop to the level needed to initiate and maintain deep sleep. You spend more time in lighter sleep stages and less time in the restorative deep sleep that your body needs for physical recovery and memory consolidation. You wake more frequently. You toss and turn, unconsciously trying to find a cooler position or expose more skin to the air. This is also why taking a warm bath or shower about 90 minutes before bed can actually help you fall asleep faster, even though it seems counterintuitive. When you immerse yourself in warm water, your body temperature rises. But when you get out, the cooling process accelerates. Your blood vessels remain dilated, your extremities continue radiating heat, and your core temperature drops more quickly than it would have otherwise. You're essentially jump-starting the natural cooling process that your body needs to initiate sleep. The connection between temperature and sleep goes beyond just falling asleep. It affects the architecture of your sleep throughout the night. Your body temperature continues to decline during the first few hours of sleep, reaching its lowest point in the early morning hours, usually around 4 or 5 a.m. Then it begins to rise again, slowly at first, then more rapidly as morning approaches. This temperature curve corresponds with your sleep stages. The deepest, most restorative sleep happens when your body temperature is at its lowest. As your temperature begins to rise in the early morning, you shift into lighter sleep stages and eventually wake. Your body temperature is quite literally pulling you out of sleep, preparing you for the active, alert state of daytime. This is why you sometimes wake up in the middle of the night feeling too hot, even if the room temperature hasn't changed. Your body's ability to regulate temperature becomes less efficient during certain sleep stages, particularly during REM sleep when your brain is highly active, but your body's thermoregulation is partially suppressed. If your bedroom is already warm, this temporary loss of temperature control can be enough to wake you. For your ancestors, this system worked seamlessly. Nighttime was cooler. Their shelters provided stable, slightly cool environments. They slept close to others, sharing body heat when needed, but the overall temperature gradient supported their body's natural cooling and warming cycles. They didn't need to think about bedroom temperature because the environment naturally provided what their biology required. But you live in climate-controlled spaces that can maintain any temperature regardless of what's happening outside. You've decoupled your sleep environment from the natural temperature rhythms that governed human sleep for millennia. And your body, evolved to use temperature as a sleep cue, struggles to adapt. This is also why seasonal changes used to affect sleep patterns much more than they do now. In summer, with longer days and warmer nights, people naturally slept less. In winter, with longer nights and cooler temperatures, they slept more. Their sleep duration fluctuated with the seasons because their bodies were responding to environmental cues that are now largely invisible behind walls and thermostats. You might maintain the exact same bedroom temperature year-round, but your body still carries echoes of those seasonal patterns. Some people find they sleep better in winter, not because they prefer cold weather, but because their bodies respond to the generally cooler ambient temperatures. Others struggle with summer sleep, fighting against their body's resistance to cooling in warm, humid conditions. Even the blankets you use affect this delicate temperature balance. Heavy blankets can trap too much heat, preventing your body from cooling efficiently. But having no blankets often feels uncomfortable because your extremities cool too quickly, and your brain interprets this as a potential threat, a sign that you might be losing too much heat. Your ancestors solved this by sleeping close together, creating a shared thermal environment that was warm enough for comfort but cool enough for sleep. The ideal sleep environment, from a temperature perspective, is one where your core can cool, but your extremities remain warm. Cool room, warm blankets on your torso, feet slightly exposed or in light socks. This allows your body to dissipate heat where it needs to, while maintaining enough warmth to feel safe and comfortable. It's a balance your body understands instinctively, even if your conscious mind finds it puzzling. So, when you lie awake, too hot or too cold, unable to find that perfect temperature, remember this. You're not being difficult or oversensitive. You're responding to a biological imperative that has governed sleep for millions of years. Your body needs to cool to sleep. It's looking for an environmental signal that matches its internal process. And in a world where you control every degree, finding that signal has become surprisingly complicated. But temperature is just one piece of the puzzle, because what you put into your body before sleep sends equally powerful signals about whether it's safe to rest or necessary to stay alert, and that's where we turn next. It's 11 o'clock at night, you're in bed, trying to sleep, but your stomach is growling, you're hungry. Not starving, just aware of the emptiness. You debate getting up for a snack. Maybe it will help you relax. Maybe it will quiet your mind. So you pad to the kitchen, eat something, return to bed, and wait for sleep to come. Except now, you're even more awake than before. Your mind is racing. Your body feels restless. Sleep feels further away than ever. What happened? You just gave your body a signal it hasn't heard in millions of years. Food is available in the middle of the night. And your ancient brain has interpreted this to mean one thing. It's not time to sleep. It's time to stay alert. For the vast majority of human history, eating happened during the day. You foraged when you could see. You hunted when prey was active. You prepared and consumed food while the sun was up, while you were mobile and alert. Nighttime was for rest, not for digestion. Your body developed a circadian rhythm, not just for sleep and wakefulness, but for hunger and satiety as well. This rhythm is controlled by two key hormones, ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is often called the hunger hormone. When your stomach is empty, ghrelin levels rise, sending signals to your brain that it's time to seek food. You feel hungry. Your attention narrows toward anything edible. Your body mobilizes energy reserves to help you hunt or forage successfully. Leptin works in the opposite direction. It's produced by your fat cells and signals satiety, the feeling of fullness and satisfaction after eating. When leptin levels are high, your brain receives the message that you have enough energy stored, that food has been consumed, that it's safe to rest and digest. Both of these hormones follow a circadian pattern. In a natural rhythm, ghrelin levels rise during the day, peaking around typical meal times, then drop at night. Leptin levels rise in the evening, helping you feel satisfied and ready for sleep. This pattern evolved because daytime was for activity and eating, nighttime was for rest and fasting. Your body assumed that if the sun was down, eating was over, and it was time to shift into recovery mode. But here's where it gets interesting. Eating doesn't just satisfy hunger, it also triggers a metabolic response that affects your entire system. When you consume food, especially carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises. Your pancreas releases insulin to help cells absorb that glucose. Your digestive system activates, diverting blood flow to your stomach and intestines. Your core body temperature increases slightly as your metabolism ramps up to process the incoming nutrients. All of these changes are the opposite of what your body needs to initiate sleep. Remember, sleep requires a drop in core temperature, a shift toward parasympathetic nervous system dominance, and a reduction in metabolic activity. Eating, particularly close to bedtime, reverses all of these processes. It heats you up, activates your sympathetic nervous system, and tells your body that now is the time for activity and alertness, not rest. For your ancestors, this made perfect sense. If you were eating, it meant you had successfully found food. It meant you were in a resource-rich environment. It meant you needed to remain alert to continue foraging, to defend your meal from competitors, to process and store whatever you'd gathered. Eating was an opportunity, and opportunities required vigilance. Going to bed hungry, on the other hand, sent a different signal. It meant resources were scarce. It meant you'd been unsuccessful in your search for food. And for ancestral humans, that meant you needed to conserve energy. Sleep became even more important because your body needed to minimize caloric expenditure until food became available again. So your body developed a response. When you're genuinely hungry, truly energy deprived, sleep becomes difficult. Your brain keeps you partially alert, ready to take advantage of any food opportunity that might arise. Ghrelin doesn't just make you hungry, it also increases wakefulness and reduces the depth of sleep. It's telling your body, don't rest too deeply, you might need to wake up and search for food. This is the trap modern humans fall into. You're not actually starving when you feel hungry before bed. You're experiencing mild, routine hunger that would have been completely normal for your ancestors at nighttime. But instead of recognizing this as a signal to sleep, you interpret it as a problem to solve. So you eat. And in doing so, you activate the exact biological systems that prevent sleep. The timing of your eating matters more than most people realize. Your digestive system has its own circadian rhythm, optimized for processing food during daylight hours. Enzymes that break down food are more abundant in the morning and afternoon. Your gut motility, the muscular contractions that move food through your intestines, is more efficient during the day. Your insulin sensitivity, your body's ability to regulate blood sugar, peaks in the morning and declines as the day progresses. When you eat late at night, you're asking your digestive system to perform at a time when it's naturally winding down. Your body processes that food less efficiently. Blood sugar remains elevated for longer. Digestion takes more effort and generates more metabolic heat. And all of this activity sends wake-promoting signals to your brain. Studies on shift workers and people who eat late at night consistently show disrupted sleep architecture. They spend less time in deep sleep, they wake more frequently, and over time their metabolic health deteriorates. They're at higher risk for weight gain, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome, not just because of what they eat, but because of when they eat it. There's another factor at play. The type of food you eat before bed matters. Carbohydrates, particularly simple sugars, cause rapid spikes in blood glucose followed by crashes. That crash can actually wake you in the middle of the night as your body releases cortisol and adrenaline to stabilize your blood sugar. It's a protective mechanism, designed to prevent hypoglycemia, but it's also deeply disruptive to sleep. Heavy, fatty, or spicy foods require more digestive effort and can cause discomfort, acid reflux, or indigestion that makes lying down uncomfortable. Protein-rich foods can be stimulating because they provide amino acids that your brain uses to produce wake-promoting neurotransmitters. Even the act of chewing and swallowing activates your nervous system in ways that oppose the relaxation needed for sleep. Your ancestors ate their last meal in the late afternoon or early evening as daylight waned. Then they had several hours of wakefulness, sitting by the fire, talking, preparing for the next day, during which their bodies began the process of digestion. By the time they lay down to sleep, the bulk of digestive work was complete. Their blood sugar had stabilized, their core temperature had begun to drop, their bodies were ready to shift fully into rest mode. But you might eat dinner at 8 or 9 at night, then go to bed an hour or two later, giving your body almost no time to process that food before you ask it to sleep. You're essentially asking your digestive system and your sleep system to work simultaneously, and they're fundamentally incompatible. This is also why intermittent fasting, particularly the practice of stopping eating several hours before bed, often improves sleep quality. It's not magic, it's alignment. You're giving your body time to complete digestion, to stabilize blood sugar, to transition from the fed state to the fasted state, which naturally promotes the metabolic conditions that support sleep. The cruel irony is that poor sleep makes you hungrier. When you're sleep deprived, ghrelin levels increase and leptin levels decrease. You feel hungrier throughout the day, particularly craving high-calorie, high-carbohydrate foods. Your body is trying to compensate for the energy deficit created by inadequate sleep, so you eat more, often later into the evening, which further disrupts your sleep, which makes you hungrier the next day. It's a vicious cycle, driven by ancient hormones that can't distinguish between genuine food scarcity and the self-imposed sleep deprivation of modern life. So, when you lie awake after a late-night snack, wondering why sleep won't come, remember this. You just told your body that it's daytime, that food is abundant, that it's time to be alert and active. Your digestive system is working, your metabolism is elevated. Your core temperature has risen, and your ancient brain, interpreting all of these signals, has decided it's not yet time to rest. But hunger and eating are just one way your body measures safety, because there's another signal your ancestors relied on to know when sleep was possible, and without it, your body remains on edge. You live alone. You sleep in a room by yourself, door closed, silence surrounding you. This is normal. This is how most adults in modern society sleep. Private bedrooms, individual space, personal boundaries. It's considered healthy, mature, appropriate. And yet, when you lie down in that quiet, empty room, something feels wrong. Not obviously wrong, just subtly uncomfortable. Like you're missing something you can't quite name. You are missing something. You're missing the presence of other humans, and your body knows it. For almost the entire span of human existence, people did not sleep alone. Solitary sleep is a recent invention, a luxury of modern architecture and cultural norms that simply didn't exist for your ancestors. They slept in groups, always, not because they preferred it, though many probably did, but because sleeping alone was statistically suicidal. Think about the math of survival. You're asleep for roughly 1/3 of your life. During that time, you're unconscious, vulnerable, unable to detect threats or defend yourself. If you're alone, that means for 8 hours every night, you have zero awareness of your environment. A predator could approach within feet of you, and you'd have no warning until it was far too late. But if you're sleeping in a group of 10 people, the equation changes completely. At any given moment, some members of the group are in lighter stages of sleep, more easily roused by unusual sounds or movements. The chances that everyone is simultaneously in deep sleep are vanishingly small. There's always someone closer to wakefulness, someone whose brain is still partially monitoring the environment, someone who can sound an alarm if danger approaches. This is called the sentinel effect, and it's been documented in social animals across the evolutionary spectrum. Meerkats take turns keeping watch while others forage. Dolphins sleep with half their brain at a time, one hemisphere resting while the other maintains awareness. Humans don't have that physiological capability, but we evolved something arguably more effective. Social sleeping arrangements where the burden of vigilance is distributed across multiple individuals. Archaeological evidence supports this. Ancient living sites show sleeping areas designed for groups, cave floors worn smooth by multiple bodies, hearths positioned centrally with sleeping spaces arranged around them. Even the size and layout of prehistoric shelters suggest communal sleeping. Privacy, as a concept, barely existed. And this wasn't just about physical safety, it was about psychological safety as well. The presence of other humans triggers a hormonal response that promotes relaxation and trust. When you're physically close to people you know, particularly people you have bonded with, your body releases oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone or the trust hormone. Oxytocin does many things. It strengthens social bonds, it reduces stress, and, crucially for sleep, it lowers cortisol levels and dampens the activity of your amygdala, that threat detection center we talked about earlier. When oxytocin is present, your brain's alarm system quiets down. Your body interprets the proximity of others as a safety signal. It's telling you you're not alone, someone else is watching, you can let your guard down, it's safe to sleep deeply. This is why so many people sleep better when sharing a bed with a partner, or even with a pet nearby. It's not just emotional comfort, though that matters. It's a biological response. The sound of another breathing nearby, the warmth of another body, the subtle movements and presence of another living creature. All of these cues tell your ancient brain that you're part of a group, that vigilance is shared, that deep sleep is possible. Studies on co-sleeping, both between adults and between parents and infants, consistently show that people sleeping near each other often synchronize their sleep cycles. Their breathing patterns align. Their heart rates coordinate. They move through sleep stages in rough harmony. This synchronization isn't conscious. It's an automatic process, likely evolved to maximize the sentinel effect. When sleep cycles are staggered, there's always someone in a lighter, more alert stage of sleep who can respond to threats. But in modern Western culture, we've largely abandoned this ancient practice. Children are taught to sleep alone as early as possible. Adults prize independent sleeping spaces. Couples who sleep in separate beds are sometimes viewed as having relationship problems. We've turned solitary sleep into a marker of maturity and self-sufficiency. And for many people, this works fine. Cultural conditioning is powerful. If you've slept alone your entire adult life, your brain has adapted. But for others, particularly those with anxiety or hypervigilance, sleeping alone can be genuinely difficult. Their amygdala never fully quiets. Their threat detection system never gets the social safety signal it's looking for. They remain in a state of partial alertness all night, unable to sink into the deep, restorative sleep their bodies need. This is also why some people find that white noise machines or nature sounds help them sleep. They're not just masking disruptive sounds. They're providing ambient auditory cues that mimic the subtle sounds of other people nearby. Breathing, movement, the rustle of fabric. These sounds tell your unconscious brain that you're not alone, that the environment is inhabited, that someone else is present and presumably keeping watch. The same principle applies to pets.
There's substantial research showing that people who sleep with dogs or cats in their bedrooms often report better sleep quality.
The animal's presence provides that social safety cue. You can hear them breathing, you can feel them shift position. Your brain registers these signals and interprets them as proximity to another vigilant creature. The fact that your dog probably isn't an effective guard against modern threats doesn't matter. Your amygdala isn't making rational calculations. It's responding to ancient patterns. Even the physical warmth of another body matters. Human thermoregulation evolved in the context of social sleeping. When temperatures dropped at night, bodies clustered together for warmth. This allowed individuals to maintain core temperature without expending excessive metabolic energy. Sleeping alone in cold conditions meant working harder to stay warm, which interfered with deep sleep and increased vulnerability to hypothermia. Your ancestors didn't have heated homes or insulated blankets. They had each other. Body heat was a shared resource, and the act of sharing it reinforced social bonds while providing thermal stability. Even now, the sensation of warmth from another person triggers relaxation responses that purely mechanical heating doesn't quite replicate. There's also the factor of social rhythm. When you sleep near others, you unconsciously coordinate with their schedules. You tend to go to bed around the same time. You wake around the same time. This social synchronization helps stabilize your circadian rhythm. Your sleep-wake cycle becomes reinforced not just by light and darkness, but by the behavioral patterns of your social group. Solitary sleepers don't have this external anchor. Your sleep schedule is determined entirely by your own choices, your own discipline, your own internal clock. And for many people, that clock drifts. You stay up later and later. You sleep in when you can. Your circadian rhythm loses its structure because there are no social cues keeping it aligned. This isn't to say that everyone should sleep in groups or that modern sleeping arrangements are inherently wrong. Cultural practices evolve for reasons, and privacy has its own benefits. But it's important to understand what you might be losing. When you sleep alone, you're asking your body to do something it wasn't really designed to do. You're removing a safety signal that your brain has relied on for millions of years. And for some people, especially those already struggling with sleep, that missing signal makes all the difference. Their hypervigilance has nothing to stand down for. Their amygdala keeps scanning, keeps listening, keeps waiting for the cue that never comes. They lie awake in their private, quiet rooms, safer than any human has ever been, and yet unable to convince their ancient brain that it's okay to fully let go. So if you sleep better with a partner or a pet, or even just a fan creating ambient sound that mimics breathing, you're not being childish or dependent. You're responding to a biological need that's as old as sleep itself. Your body is looking for the signal that you're part of a group, that you're not alone in the darkness, that someone else is sharing the burden of staying alert. And when it finds that signal, even artificially, sleep becomes possible in ways it never was before. But social presence is just one piece of a larger puzzle, because your body has other checks it performs before allowing you to slip into unconsciousness, and understanding them reveals just how carefully your brain guards the transition into sleep. You're finally drifting off. Your breathing has slowed. Your thoughts have quieted. Your muscles are releasing tension you didn't even know you were holding. And then, suddenly, violently, your entire body jerks. Your leg kicks out. Your arms flail. You gasp awake, heart pounding, completely disoriented. For a moment, you're convinced something terrible just happened. But nothing did. You were falling asleep, and your body panicked. Welcome to the hypnic jerk, one of the strangest and most common phenomena in human sleep, and it's your brain performing one final threat assessment before it releases control. Hypnic jerks, also called sleep starts or hypnagogic jerks, happen to roughly 70% of people at some point in their lives. For some, they're rare. For others, they happen almost nightly. They're sudden, involuntary muscle contractions that occur precisely at the boundary between wakefulness and sleep, in that transitional state called the hypnagogic phase. The experience is unmistakable. You're lying still, relaxed, almost asleep. Then your muscles suddenly contract, hard and fast, usually in your legs, but sometimes in your arms or your whole body. It's often accompanied by a sensation of falling, or sometimes a flash of light, a loud sound that isn't real, or a feeling of electric shock running through your limbs. You jerk awake, confused and alert, and sleep suddenly feels very far away. Scientists don't have a complete explanation for why hypnic jerks happen, but the leading theory is fascinating. It involves a conflict between two systems in your brain that are both trying to do their jobs during the transition into sleep. As you fall asleep, your brain begins shutting down your motor control. This is necessary. During certain stages of sleep, particularly REM sleep when you dream, your brain needs to paralyze your muscles to prevent you from physically acting out whatever's happening in your dreams. This paralysis is controlled by your brainstem, which sends inhibitory signals down your spinal cord, essentially turning off voluntary muscle movement. But this shutdown doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual. And during the transition, there's a period where your motor system is partially offline, but not completely. Your muscles are relaxing, your reflexes are dampening, and your brain is losing its moment-to-moment control over your body. At the same time, another part of your brain, the reticular activating system, is still monitoring for threats. This is the network that maintains alertness and arousal. It's been keeping you awake all day, processing sensory input, maintaining consciousness. And as you drift towards sleep, it's reluctantly letting go of control. Here's where the conflict happens. As your muscles relax and your body becomes still, your reticular activating system sometimes misinterprets these signals. It detects the sudden loss of muscle tone, the slowing of breathing, the change in posture, and it responds with alarm. Something is wrong. You're losing control. You might be in danger. Maybe you're falling. And so it triggers a startle response, a last-ditch attempt to wake you up and restore motor control. Your muscles contract violently. Your heart rate spikes. Adrenaline floods your system. You jerk awake, and your brain, now fully alert, scans the environment for whatever threat justified this emergency response. It finds nothing, because there was no threat. Just your own brain, confused by the transition into sleep, pulling the emergency brake at the last second. This is evolutionary caution taken to an extreme. Remember, sleep makes you vulnerable. For your ancestors, the transition into sleep was a moment of genuine danger. If you were in an unsafe position, perched on a branch, sitting near a cliff, not properly settled in your shelter, falling asleep could be lethal. Your body needed one final check, one last moment of motor control to ensure you were truly safe before surrendering consciousness. Some researchers believe hypnic jerks are remnants of this safety check, an evolutionary holdover from when our primate ancestors slept in trees. The sensation of falling that often accompanies a hypnic jerk might be your brain's way of testing whether you're securely positioned. If you were actually about to fall from a tree, this jerk would wake you in time to grab a branch. In your bed, it just wakes you up for no reason. But there's more to the story. Hypnic jerks don't happen randomly. They're more common when you're stressed, anxious, or sleep deprived. They're more frequent when you've consumed caffeine late in the day or exercised vigorously close to bedtime. They happen more often when you're sleeping in an unfamiliar place or in an uncomfortable position. All of these factors have something in common. They make your reticular activating system more sensitive, more vigilant, more likely to interpret the transition into sleep as potentially dangerous. When you're stressed, your baseline level of arousal is elevated. Your brain is already on higher alert, scanning for threats, maintaining a state of readiness. As you try to fall asleep, this heightened vigilance doesn't shut off easily. Your reticular activating system resists letting go, and when it detects the physiological changes that accompany sleep onset, it's more likely to trigger a false alarm, to pull you back from the edge of unconsciousness with a hypnic jerk. Caffeine makes this worse because it's an adenosine antagonist. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that builds up in your brain throughout the day, creating sleep pressure that increasing urge to rest. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, preventing you from feeling sleepy even when your body desperately needs rest. When you finally try to sleep with caffeine still in your system, your brain is receiving conflicting signals. Your body is trying to shut down, but your neurochemistry is saying stay awake. This conflict makes hypnic jerks more likely. Exercise has a similar effect if done too close to bedtime. Physical activity raises your core body temperature, increases adrenaline and cortisol, and activates your sympathetic nervous system. All of these changes are the opposite of what your body needs for sleep. If you try to sleep while your system is still revved up from exercise, your reticular activating system is primed for action, not rest. It's more likely to misinterpret the transition into sleep as a threat and trigger a protective jerk response. Even irregular breathing can trigger hypnic jerks. As you fall asleep, your breathing pattern changes. It becomes slower, more regular, more automatic. But sometimes, particularly if you're anxious or your airway is partially obstructed, your breathing becomes irregular. You might take a shallow breath or hold your breath briefly without realizing it. Your brain detects this change in oxygen levels and responds with a startle, jerking you awake to restore normal breathing. It's a protective mechanism designed to prevent respiratory problems during sleep, but it's also deeply disruptive. The sensation of falling that often accompanies hypnic jerks is particularly interesting. Some researchers believe it's your brain creating a narrative to explain the sudden muscle contraction. You jerk awake, and your brain, confused, searches for a reason. The sensation of your muscles contracting feels similar to the reflexive movements you'd make if you were actually falling. So your brain concludes, I must be falling. It generates the sensory experience to match the motor response, even though neither is based in reality. Others think the falling sensation comes first, a misfire in your vestibular system, the network in your inner ear that controls balance and spatial orientation. As you fall asleep, this system recalibrates, adjusting to the fact that you're now horizontal and still. Sometimes this recalibration goes wrong, Your brain briefly loses track of your body's position in space. It interprets this confusion as falling and triggers a startled response to protect you from a threat that doesn't exist. Whatever the mechanism, the result is the same. You're yanked back from sleep at the moment you're closest to achieving it. And the frustration of this, the anxiety it creates, can make falling back asleep even harder. You lie there, heart racing, wondering if it will happen again, and that worry itself increases the likelihood that it will. Because anxiety is the primary trigger for hypnic jerks. The more you fear them, the more likely they are to occur. Your ancestors experienced hypnic jerks too, but for them, these jolts served a purpose. They were a final safety check, a last-second assessment before surrendering to sleep. In a world where danger was real and constant, this extra moment of vigilance could save your life. But in your modern bedroom, safe and still, hypnic jerks serve no purpose except to remind you that your brain is still guarding you against threats that vanished millennia ago. And this protective vigilance extends beyond single moments, because the way your brain structures sleep itself reveals an ancient compromise between the need for rest and the need to stay alive. You don't sleep the same way all night. If you've ever woken up and noticed that the quality of your sleep felt different at different times, lighter sometimes, heavier others, you were noticing something real. Your brain doesn't simply turn off consciousness and leave it off until morning. Instead, it cycles you through distinct stages of sleep, each with its own purpose, its own characteristics, its own level of awareness. And this cycling pattern isn't random. It's an evolutionary compromise between two competing needs, the need to rest and the need to survive. Sleep is structured in cycles, each lasting roughly 90 minutes. Most people complete 4 to 6 of these cycles per night, depending on how long they sleep. And within each cycle, you move through several distinct stages, from light sleep to deep sleep to REM sleep and back again. Your brain doesn't stay in one state. It oscillates, moving between different levels of consciousness, different degrees of vulnerability. This architecture exists for a reason. If you slept deeply and continuously for 8 hours, completely unconscious and unresponsive, you'd be extraordinarily vulnerable. A predator could approach. A threat could emerge. Your shelter could catch fire, and you'd have no chance of waking in time to respond. Deep, unbroken sleep would have been a death sentence for your ancestors. So your brain evolved a solution. It gives you deep sleep, the restorative unconsciousness your body desperately needs, but only in controlled doses. Between these periods of deep sleep, it brings you back to lighter stages where you're more easily roused, where your sensory systems remain partially active, where unusual sounds or sensations can wake you if necessary. You rest, but you never completely let go. Not for long. The first stage of sleep is called N1, the transition phase. This is where hypnic jerks happen, where you're hovering between wakefulness and sleep. Your brain waves begin to slow, your muscles relax. You might experience fragmented thoughts or brief visual images, but you're still easily awakened. A sound, a touch, even a shift in your own position can bring you back to full consciousness. N1 usually lasts only a few minutes. It's not particularly restorative. It's more of a buffer, a transitional state that allows your brain to ease into deeper sleep without abrupt changes. If you're woken from N1, you might not even realize you were asleep. You were just resting your eyes, drifting somewhere between. Next comes N2, light sleep. This is where you spend the majority of your night, roughly 45 to 55% of your total sleep time. In N2, your brain waves continue to slow, but they're punctuated by sudden bursts of rapid activity called sleep spindles and K complexes. These are thought to play a role in memory, consolidation, and in protecting your sleep from disruption. In N2, you're definitely asleep, but you're still relatively close to the surface. Loud sounds can wake you. Your brain is still monitoring the environment, still processing sensory input at some level. This is your brain's guard duty phase. You're resting, recovering, but you're not so deep that you can't respond if needed. For your ancestors, this stage was crucial. It allowed them to get substantial rest while remaining alert enough to detect danger. Then you descend into N3, deep sleep, also called slow wave sleep because of the large, slow delta waves that dominate your brain activity. This is the most restorative stage of sleep. This is where your body performs physical repair, where growth hormone is released, where your immune system does its most important maintenance work. This is the sleep you need to feel truly rested. But N3 is also the most vulnerable stage. In deep sleep, you're profoundly unconscious. Your sensory systems are largely offline. It takes much louder sounds or more intense stimuli to wake you. Your body is immobile, your muscles deeply relaxed. If something dangerous happened during deep sleep, you'd be slow to respond, disoriented, unable to react quickly. This is why your brain doesn't keep you in N3 all night. You get it in concentrated doses, mostly in the first half of the night. Each deep sleep period lasts maybe 20 to 40 minutes. Then your brain pulls you back up into lighter stages before cycling down again. It's rationing your vulnerability, giving you the restorative sleep you need while limiting how long you remain deeply unconscious at any one time. As the night progresses, you spend less time in deep sleep and more time in REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and it's the stage where most vivid dreaming occurs. During REM, your brain becomes highly active, almost as active as when you're awake. Your eyes move rapidly beneath your closed lids, tracking the images in your dreams. But your body is paralyzed, locked in a state called REM atonia, where voluntary muscles can't move. This paralysis is protective. It prevents you from acting out your dreams, from thrashing around and potentially injuring yourself or others sleeping nearby. But it also creates a strange paradox. Your brain is awake, churning through complex scenarios, processing emotions, consolidating memories, but your body is more immobile than at any other time during sleep. REM sleep serves functions we're still trying to fully understand. It appears crucial for emotional regulation, for processing experiences, for creativity and problem solving. But from an evolutionary perspective, REM is also when you're rehearsing threats. Dreams, especially anxiety dreams and nightmares, often involve dangerous scenarios, being chased, falling, losing control, facing threats. These aren't random, they're simulations, practice runs for your threat detection and response systems. Your brain is using REM sleep to run drills, to keep your fear responses sharp, to maintain the neural pathways that help you survive dangerous situations. It's showing you scenarios where something goes wrong and forcing you to experience the emotional weight of those situations. When you wake from a nightmare, heart pounding and afraid, your amygdala has just completed a training session. It's been practicing for dangers that might never come, keeping itself ready, just in case. But here's what's important about this cycling structure. You're not meant to stay in any one stage for your entire night. The oscillation between light, deep, and REM sleep is the design, not a flaw. Each stage serves a purpose. Light sleep keeps you responsive. Deep sleep restores your body. REM sleep processes your experiences and trains your threat responses. Together, they create a pattern that allowed your ancestors to rest while remaining alive. This is also why sleep fragmentation is so damaging. When you're woken repeatedly throughout the night, you never complete full cycles. You might touch deep sleep briefly, but get pulled out before you've gotten enough. You might enter REM, but be disrupted before the cycle finishes. Your brain tries to restart the cycle, but if interruptions are frequent, you end up spending most of the night in lighter stages, never achieving the deep restoration your body needs. Modern sleep tracking devices can show you this architecture. You can see your cycles, watch how you move through stages, notice when you wake briefly between cycles, and if you look closely, you'll see a pattern. You don't descend smoothly into deep sleep and stay there. You cycle, you rise and fall. You touch wakefulness multiple times per night, even if you don't remember it. These brief awakenings between cycles are normal. They're your brain surfacing to check the environment before committing to another cycle. In the ancestral environment, these moments were opportunities to scan for danger, to adjust your position, to ensure everything remained safe. If all was well, you'd sink back into the next cycle. If something had changed, you'd wake fully and respond. But in the modern world, these between-cycle awakenings can become problematic. If you wake enough to check your phone, to look at the clock, to start thinking about your day, you can disrupt the transition into your next cycle. What should be a brief, unconscious check-in becomes a full waking episode. And then falling back asleep requires starting the entire process over, moving through light sleep again before reaching the deeper, more restorative stages. Your sleep architecture also changes with age. Young children spend far more time in deep sleep and REM sleep than adults do. Their brains and bodies are growing rapidly, and they need that extra restoration and neural processing. As you age, deep sleep becomes harder to achieve. Older adults often spend most of their night in lighter stages, waking more frequently, feeling less rested, even after a full night in bed. This isn't just aging, it's your vigilance system refusing to fully stand down. As threats accumulated over a lifetime in the ancestral environment, older individuals became more cautious, their threat detection systems more sensitive. Lighter sleep meant they could respond to danger more quickly, compensating for slower reflexes and reduced physical strength. Evolution favored elders who slept lightly over those who slept deeply because light sleepers lived longer. So when you wake between cycles, or when you feel like your sleep isn't as deep as it used to be, remember this. Your brain is following an ancient pattern, one that prioritizes survival over comfort, vigilance over rest. You cycle through stages because complete unconsciousness is dangerous. You wake briefly because your brain is checking in, making sure you're still safe before diving back down. And your sleep becomes lighter with age because caution, in evolutionary terms, was always the price of longevity. But vigilance during sleep is just one way your body tries to protect you, because there's another system, one that's supposed to activate only in genuine emergencies, and in modern life, it almost never turns off. Imagine you're walking through the wilderness and you see a lion. Your body's response is immediate and automatic. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing quickens, blood rushes to your major muscles, your pupils dilate, adrenaline floods your system. You're ready to fight or run within seconds, without conscious thought, without hesitation. This is your sympathetic nervous system, and it's one of the most powerful survival mechanisms you possess. It's also the reason you can't sleep. Your autonomic nervous system has two branches that work in opposition. The sympathetic branch is your accelerator, your emergency response system. It activates when you face threats, preparing your body for immediate action. The parasympathetic branch is your brake, your rest and digest system. It activates when you're safe, allowing your body to relax, repair, and restore itself. Sleep requires parasympathetic dominance. But in modern life, most people are stuck in sympathetic overdrive, and their bodies have forgotten how to shift gears. For your ancestors, the fight or flight response was a short-term activation. You encountered a predator. Your sympathetic system kicked in. You fought or fled. The threat passed. Your parasympathetic system took over. Your heart rate returned to normal. Your breathing slowed. Your body shifted back into recovery mode. The entire cycle might last minutes, maybe an hour at most. Then it was over. But modern threats don't work that way. You're not running from lions. You're worried about deadlines, relationships, finances, health, and the future. These threats are chronic, not acute. They don't appear suddenly and then disappear. They linger. They follow you home. They sit beside you at dinner. They climb into bed with you at night. And your sympathetic nervous system, which evolved to handle brief emergencies, is now activated constantly, day after day, with no resolution and no relief. The problem is, your body can't tell the difference between a lion and an overdue bill. Both activate the same stress response. Both trigger the release of cortisol and adrenaline. Both prepare your body for action. Your heart rate increases to pump more blood. Your breathing quickens to take in more oxygen. Your liver releases glucose to fuel your muscles. Your immune system temporarily suppresses non-essential functions to conserve energy for the immediate threat. All of this made perfect sense when threats were physical and immediate. If you needed to run from a predator, these changes gave you the best chance of survival. But when the threat is an email from your boss or a conversation you need to have tomorrow, these physiological changes are useless. You can't fight an email. You can't outrun anxiety. Your body has mobilized for action, but there's no action to take. So all that activation just sits there, humming in your system, keeping you wired and alert. This is chronic stress, and it's the enemy of sleep, because sleep requires the exact opposite state. Sleep requires your heart rate to slow, your breathing to deepen, your muscles to relax, your mind to quiet. Sleep requires parasympathetic activation. But if your sympathetic system is constantly engaged, if your body believes you're under threat, it will not allow you to sleep deeply. Because in the logic of survival, if there's danger, rest is a luxury you cannot afford. Cortisol is supposed to follow a daily rhythm. It should peak in the early morning, giving you energy to wake up and face the day. Then it should gradually decline throughout the day, reaching its lowest point around midnight. This decline is part of what allows melatonin to rise and sleep to occur. But when you're chronically stressed, cortisol doesn't follow this pattern. It remains elevated into the evening. It spikes in response to worries and rumination. And high cortisol at night is directly antagonistic to sleep. Cortisol blocks melatonin production. It keeps your brain alert. It maintains a state of readiness. Even if you're physically exhausted, even if you desperately want to sleep, elevated cortisol tells your body that now is not the time. There's still danger. There's still something unresolved. You need to stay awake and deal with it. Adrenaline, also called epinephrine, has a similar effect. It's released in response to acute stress and creates that jittery, wired feeling. Your heart pounds, your thoughts race, you feel simultaneously exhausted and unable to relax. This is your body in a state of high alert, primed for action that never comes. And because modern stressors are psychological rather than physical, there's no release. You can't discharge that activation through movement or action. It just accumulates, layer upon layer, until your baseline state is one of constant, low-level arousal. This is why anxiety and insomnia are so often linked. They're both manifestations of a sympathetic nervous system that won't shut off. Your amygdala detects threats, real or imagined, and triggers the stress response. Your body mobilizes, but there's nothing to fight and nowhere to run. So you lie in bed, muscles tense, mind racing, heart beating too fast, trapped in a state of readiness for a battle that exists only in your thoughts. The cruel irony is that poor sleep makes stress worse. When you're sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation, becomes less active. Meanwhile, your amygdala becomes more reactive. You perceive threats more readily. You overreact to minor stressors. Your emotional responses become exaggerated. Things that wouldn't normally bother you suddenly feel overwhelming. So sleep deprivation increases stress, which increases sympathetic activation, which prevents sleep, which increases stress even further. It's a vicious cycle, each element reinforcing the others, pulling you deeper into a state of chronic exhaustion and hypervigilance. Your parasympathetic nervous system is supposed to be your antidote to all of this. When activated, it lowers your heart rate, deepens your breathing, relaxes your muscles, and quiets your mind. It signals safety. It tells your body that the threat has passed, that it's okay to let go, that rest is now possible. But activating the parasympathetic system requires a sense of safety. And for many people in modern life, that sense of safety never comes. You're surrounded by low-level stressors all the time. Notifications on your phone, news about crises you can't control, demands on your time and energy, financial pressures, social obligations, health concerns. Your brain interprets this constant stimulation as ongoing threat. It never gets the all-clear signal. It never receives confirmation that it's safe to fully relax. And so your sympathetic system remains dominant, your parasympathetic system remains suppressed, and sleep becomes something you chase but rarely catch. This is also why certain practices help some people sleep better. Deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, gentle stretching. These aren't just relaxation techniques. They're ways of manually activating your parasympathetic nervous system. When you breathe slowly and deeply, when you consciously relax your muscles, when you focus your attention inward and away from external threats, you're sending signals to your brain that it's safe. You're overriding the sympathetic activation with parasympathetic cues. But these techniques only work if you practice them consistently and if the underlying stress isn't overwhelming. If your sympathetic system is in full emergency mode, a few deep breaths won't be enough to shift the balance. Your body is convinced there's danger. It's not going to stand down just because you're breathing slowly. It needs more evidence. It needs time. It needs repeated signals of safety before it's willing to let go. Your ancestors had natural parasympathetic activators built into their environment. The setting sun signaled the end of the active day. The gathering around the fire provided social safety. The darkness enforced rest. The absence of stimulation allowed their nervous systems to downshift naturally. They didn't need techniques or interventions. The structure of their lives provided automatic transitions from activity to rest. But you live in a world of constant stimulation, constant demand, constant connection. There's no natural downshift, no automatic transition. Your day ends when you decide it ends, not when the sun sets. And often, your day doesn't really end at all. You carry your work home, you check email at midnight, you scroll through news and social media right up until you turn off the light. Your sympathetic system never gets a break. It never receives the signal that the day is over and it's time to rest. So your fight or flight system, designed for brief emergencies, runs continuously, and your body, trapped in a state of constant readiness for threats that never fully materialize and never fully disappear, forgets how to sleep. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because the modern world has created conditions your ancient nervous system was never designed to handle. But your nervous system isn't the only ancient communication network affecting your sleep, because deep in your abdomen, another evolutionary system is sending signals your brain can't ignore. You've felt this before. You're lying in bed trying to sleep and your stomach feels wrong. Not painful exactly, just uncomfortable, uneasy. Maybe there's a dull ache. Maybe it's churning. Maybe it's just a vague sense that something isn't right down there. And along with that physical sensation comes anxiety. Your mind starts racing. You can't relax. Sleep feels impossible. You assume the anxiety is causing the stomach problems, but what if it's the other way around? Your gut and your brain are in constant communication, connected by a massive network of neurons called the enteric nervous system. This network is so extensive, containing over 100 million nerve cells, that scientists sometimes call it your second brain. And it's not just passively receiving orders from your head. It's sending information upward constantly, influencing your emotions, your stress levels, and your ability to sleep. This communication happens primarily through the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body. It runs from your brainstem down through your neck and chest into your abdomen, connecting your brain to your heart, lungs, and digestive system. About 80 to 90% of the signals traveling along the vagus nerve go upward from your gut to your brain, not the other way around. Your gut is talking to your brain far more than your brain is talking to your gut. And what is your gut saying? It's reporting on the state of your digestive system, yes, but it's also reporting on safety. For your ancestors, gut discomfort was a critical warning signal. It could mean you'd eaten something toxic, that food was contaminated, that you were sick or about to become sick. Digestive distress meant vulnerability. It meant you needed to stay alert, to be ready to respond, to avoid further danger. So when your gut sends distress signals to your brain interprets this as a reason not to sleep. Something is wrong. Your body isn't safe. You need to remain conscious and monitor the situation. Even if the discomfort is mild, even if it's just indigestion or stress-related tension, your brain receives it as a threat signal. And threat signals prevent sleep. This is why anxiety so often manifests as stomach problems. When you're stressed or anxious, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Blood flow is redirected away from your digestive organs and toward your muscles. Your gut motility, the rhythmic contractions that move food through your intestines, becomes disrupted. Your stomach produces more acid. Your intestines may cramp or spasm. You might feel nauseous, bloated, or experience changes in bowel movements. These physical symptoms aren't imaginary or psychosomatic in the dismissive sense. They're real physiological responses to stress. Your gut is part of your fight or flight response. When danger appears, digestion becomes a low priority. Your body wants all available resources devoted to escaping or fighting, not to breaking down food. So it shuts down digestive processes, and that shutdown feels uncomfortable. But here's where the cycle gets vicious. The gut discomfort sends signals back to your brain that something is wrong. Your brain interprets these signals as additional evidence of threat. Stress increases, sympathetic activation intensifies, gut problems worsen. More distress signals go to the brain. Anxiety escalates. And sleep becomes impossible because both your brain and your gut are telling you that now is not a safe time to rest. The vagus nerve is also the primary pathway for parasympathetic activation, the rest and digest response we talked about earlier. When your vagus nerve is functioning well, when signals are flowing smoothly between your gut and your brain, you feel calm. Your heart rate is steady. Your breathing is deep, your digestion works efficiently, and sleep comes naturally. But when vagal tone is poor, when this communication is disrupted, everything suffers. Low vagal tone is associated with anxiety, depression, digestive disorders, and chronic stress. It means your parasympathetic nervous system isn't strong enough to counter your sympathetic activation. You can't shift out of fight or flight mode. You can't fully relax. And your gut, sensing this ongoing state of stress, continues sending alarm signals upward, perpetuating the cycle. Your gut is also home to trillions of microorganisms, collectively called your microbiome. These bacteria, fungi, and other microbes do far more than help digest food. They produce neurotransmitters, including serotonin, dopamine, and gamma-aminobutyric acid, also called GABA. These are the same chemicals your brain uses to regulate mood, anxiety, and sleep. In fact, roughly 90 to 95% of your body's serotonin is produced in your gut, not your brain. When your microbiome is balanced, when you have a healthy diversity of beneficial microbes, they support mental health and sleep. But when your microbiome is disrupted by poor diet, antibiotics, chronic stress, or illness, the production of these neurotransmitters becomes imbalanced. You might have too little serotonin, which is needed for melatonin production. You might have too little GABA, which helps calm brain activity, and your sleep suffers as a result. This is also why what you eat affects how you sleep. Not just because of digestion and blood sugar, though those matter, but because your diet directly influences your microbiome. A diet high in processed foods, sugar, and unhealthy fats can promote the growth of harmful bacteria while starving beneficial ones. These harmful bacteria produce inflammatory compounds and metabolic byproducts that travel through your bloodstream to your brain, where they can increase anxiety and disrupt sleep. Conversely, a diet rich in fiber, fermented foods, and diverse plant-based nutrients supports beneficial bacteria. These microbes produce short-chain fatty acids and other compounds that reduce inflammation, support gut barrier integrity, and promote the production of sleep-supporting neurotransmitters. You're not just feeding yourself when you eat, you're feeding your microbiome, and your microbiome, in turn, is influencing your brain and your sleep. For your ancestors, gut health was directly tied to survival. Eating contaminated food could be fatal. Parasites and infections were common. Your gut needed to be highly sensitive to potential threats, capable of identifying and responding to danger quickly. That sensitivity was protective. It kept you alive. But in the modern world, where food is generally safe but stress is constant, that same sensitivity creates problems. Your gut responds to stress as if you'd eaten something dangerous. It becomes inflamed, reactive, uncomfortable, and those signals travel upward to your brain, creating anxiety and preventing sleep. You're experiencing a mismatch between your gut's evolutionary programming and the reality of your current environment. Your gut is sounding alarms for threats that don't exist, and your brain is responding as if they do. This is why practices that support vagal tone, like deep diaphragmatic breathing, humming, singing, or gentle yoga, can improve both gut function and sleep. These activities stimulate the vagus nerve, strengthening the communication between your gut and your brain. They activate your parasympathetic nervous system, telling both your gut and your brain that it's safe to relax. They help break the cycle of stress and discomfort that keeps you awake. It's also why chronic digestive issues like irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, or acid reflux are so often accompanied by sleep problems. The gut is in a constant state of distress. It's sending alarm signals continuously, and your brain, receiving those signals, maintains a state of alertness. Even if you're exhausted, even if you want nothing more than to sleep, your gut is telling your brain that something is wrong, and your brain believes it. Your ancestors didn't have the language to describe the gut-brain axis, but they understood it intuitively. They knew that gut feelings were real, that your stomach could tell you things your mind hadn't yet processed. They trusted their gut instincts because those instincts were based on real physiological signals traveling from their digestive system to their brain. And when their gut said something was wrong, they listened, because ignoring those signals could be fatal. But now you live in a world where your gut is constantly sending false alarms. Stress triggers gut discomfort. Gut discomfort triggers anxiety. Anxiety triggers more stress. And your brain, caught in the middle, receives a continuous stream of signals telling it that something is wrong, that you're not safe, that sleep would be dangerous. So you lie awake, stomach churning, mind racing, trapped in a feedback loop between two systems that were designed to protect you, but now just keep you from rest. The connection between your gut and your sleep isn't obvious. You can't see the vagus nerve. You can't feel the individual signals traveling between your abdomen and your brain, but you can feel the result, that sense of unease that sits in your stomach and prevents your mind from quieting, that physical discomfort that keeps you awake even when you're exhausted. Your gut is speaking, and your brain is listening. And until both agree that it's safe, sleep will remain just out of reach. But the gut-brain axis isn't the only communication system struggling with modern life, because even the simple act of lying still has become surprisingly difficult for bodies designed to move. You're lying in bed. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. And yet, you can't stop moving. You shift positions. You adjust your pillow. You flip over. You stretch your legs. You wiggle your toes. Something inside you resists the stillness. You feel restless, uncomfortable, like your body is rejecting the very idea of being motionless. And the more you try to stay still, the more agitated you become. This isn't just discomfort. This is your body remembering a time when stillness meant danger, when movement meant survival, when doing nothing could get you killed. For most of human history, survival required near constant physical activity. Your ancestors didn't sit at desks. They didn't commute in cars. They walked, climbed, ran, carried, gathered, built, and hunted. Movement was life. It was how you found food, how you escaped predators, how you migrated with the seasons, how you maintained shelter. A sedentary lifestyle wasn't an option. It was a death sentence. Your body evolved to expect this level of activity. Your muscles, joints, cardiovascular system, even your brain, all developed in an environment where movement was constant and necessary. Physical exertion wasn't exercise, it was existence. And at the end of a long day of movement, your body was ready to rest. Your muscles were tired, your energy was depleted. Sleep came easily because your body had earned it. But now you spend most of your day sitting. You sit at breakfast, you sit in your car, you sit at work for 8 or 10 or 12 hours. You sit during your commute home, you sit at dinner, you sit while watching television or scrolling through your phone. By the time you go to bed, your body has barely moved, your muscles haven't been challenged, your cardiovascular system hasn't been engaged. And yet, you expect sleep to come as easily as it did for your ancestors who spent their days in motion. Your body doesn't understand this. It's confused. You've given it almost no physical demand all day. No reason to feel tired. No signal that the day's work is complete. So when you lie down and try to sleep, your body resists. It's not ready. It hasn't done anything. It still has energy to burn, tension to release, a restlessness that has nowhere to go except into fidgeting, tossing, turning, and a vague sense of discomfort that prevents you from settling into stillness. This is also why complete stillness feels uncomfortable. When you try to lie perfectly still, when you consciously stop moving, something inside you rebels. You feel an urge to shift, to adjust, to move something. Your body is designed for motion. Stillness, for extended periods, was historically unusual and often dangerous. If you were completely still during the day, it either meant you were hiding from a threat or you were injured or sick. Either way, stillness signaled vulnerability. Your nervous system is wired to maintain a baseline level of movement and awareness. Small, unconscious adjustments in posture keep your blood flowing, prevent pressure sores, and maintain your readiness to respond if needed. When you force yourself into complete stillness, your brain interprets this as abnormal. It generates sensations, itches, discomforts, urges to move, anything to get you to break that unnatural immobility. For some people, this manifests as restless leg syndrome, a condition where you feel overwhelming urges to move your legs, particularly at night when you're trying to rest. The sensations are often described as crawling, tingling, aching, or pulling. The only relief comes from movement, and the condition worsens when you're still, making sleep nearly impossible. Restless leg syndrome is thought to be related to dopamine dysregulation and iron deficiency, but there's also an evolutionary component. Movement has always been soothing to the nervous system. Rocking, swaying, walking, these rhythmic motions activate the vestibular system and promote relaxation. Infants are calmed by being rocked. Adults often fidget or pace when anxious. Movement is a self-soothing mechanism deeply embedded in your biology. When you're forced into stillness but your nervous system is agitated, movement becomes an irresistible urge. Your body is trying to regulate itself, to discharge tension, to restore a sense of control and safety. And lying still in bed, particularly when you're already anxious or sleep-deprived, triggers this urge intensely. Your body wants to move, needs to move, and interprets your attempt to remain still as a form of stress. There's also the issue of muscle tension. When you're stressed, your muscles contract. You hold tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your neck, your legs. This tension is part of the fight or flight response, preparing your body for action. But if no action comes, if you never discharge that tension through movement, It just sits there, accumulating throughout the day. By the time you lie down to sleep, your muscles are tight, uncomfortable, holding stress you're not even consciously aware of. Your ancestors released this tension naturally through their daily activities. The physical demands of their lives kept their muscles active and loose. But you accumulate tension with no natural release. You carry it to bed with you. And it manifests as restlessness, as an inability to find a comfortable position, as a body that won't settle no matter how tired you are. This is why physical activity during the day improves sleep at night. Not just because it tires you out, though that helps, but because it gives your body what it expects. Movement signals to your brain that you're living the way humans are supposed to live, that you're active and engaged, that the day has been productive. And when you've moved enough, when your muscles have worked and your cardiovascular system has been challenged, your body recognizes that it's time to rest. But the timing matters. Exercise too close to bedtime, particularly intense exercise, can interfere with sleep. It raises your core body temperature, increases cortisol and adrenaline, and activates your sympathetic nervous system. All of these effects are the opposite of what you need to fall asleep. Your body needs time to cool down, to shift back into parasympathetic mode, to transition from exertion to rest. For your ancestors, this transition happened naturally. Their physical activity ended as daylight waned. They had hours between their last exertion and sleep. Their bodies cooled gradually, their heart rates returned to baseline. By the time they lay down, they were physiologically ready to rest. But if you exercise at 9 p.m. and try to sleep by 10, your body hasn't had time to make that shift. You're still revved up, still warm, still in a state of activation that opposes sleep. There's also something about being told to be still that makes stillness harder. When you consciously try to force your body into immobility, when you tell yourself you must not move, you must lie still, you must fall asleep, you create pressure, and pressure activates stress responses. Your body tenses, your mind focuses on the very thing you're trying not to do. You become hyper-aware of every itch, every discomfort, every urge to move. And the more you resist, the stronger those urges become. This is why paradoxical intention sometimes work. When you give yourself permission to move, to adjust, to not worry about being perfectly still, the resistance often fades. You're no longer fighting your body's natural impulses. You're allowing them, and sometimes that allowance is enough to break the cycle of tension and restlessness that was keeping you awake. Your ancestors didn't lie perfectly still all night. They shifted positions, they adjusted for comfort, they responded to their body's needs without judgment or frustration. Sleep wasn't a performance or a test. It was a natural consequence of living an active, physically engaged life. Their bodies were tired from real exertion, their muscles were ready to rest, and when they lay down, stillness came naturally because movement had already served its purpose. But you live in a world that demands stillness without providing the movement that makes stillness possible. You sit all day, accumulating tension, never fully engaging your body's need for activity. Then you lie down at night and expect stillness to come easily. Expect your restless, understimulated body to simply accept inactivity and fall asleep. And when it doesn't, when you feel that persistent urge to move, to fidget, to shift, you judge yourself. You think something is wrong with you, but nothing is wrong. Your body is just doing what it was designed to do, resisting prolonged stillness, seeking movement, trying to discharge energy and tension that never had an outlet during the day. So when you lie awake, unable to get comfortable, shifting positions every few minutes, feeling that restless agitation that won't let you settle? Remember this: you're not broken or difficult. You're a body designed for movement, trying to rest in a life that barely allows motion. And until you give that body what it needs during the day, stillness at night will always feel like a struggle. But restlessness isn't the only signal your body sends when it's unsure about sleep, because there's another ancient rhythm, one that governs your very first moments of waking and understanding. It reveals why mornings can feel like an ambush. You wake up, not gradually, not peacefully, but with your heart already racing, your eyes open, and immediately your mind is churning with worry. Before you've even fully regained consciousness, anxiety is there, waiting for you, heavy and immediate. You haven't checked your phone. You haven't thought about your day. You haven't done anything yet, but already you feel afraid, and you have no idea why. This isn't random. This isn't your mind being cruel or irrational. This is your body executing an ancient protocol, one that has kept humans alive for thousands of generations. It's called the cortisol awakening response, and it's your brain's way of preparing you for whatever dangers the new day might hold. Cortisol, as we've discussed, is your primary stress hormone. It helps mobilize energy, sharpen focus, and prepare your body for action. In a healthy circadian rhythm, cortisol follows a predictable pattern. It's lowest at night, allowing you to sleep. Then, about 30 to 45 minutes before you naturally wake, it begins to rise. By the time you open your eyes, your cortisol levels have increased by 50 to 75% from their nighttime baseline. This spike is intentional. It's your body's wake-up call, designed to pull you out of sleep and into a state of alertness. Cortisol increases your blood sugar, giving you immediate energy. It raises your blood pressure, getting oxygen to your brain and muscles. It heightens your senses and sharpens your attention. Within minutes of waking, you're physiologically ready to face whatever the day brings. Or at least, that's how it's supposed to work. For your ancestors, this morning cortisol surge made perfect sense. Waking up was a vulnerable moment. You'd been unconscious for hours. The environment might have changed. Threats might have emerged during the night. You needed to wake quickly, assess your surroundings, and determine whether you were safe or in danger. The cortisol spike ensured you didn't wake slowly and groggily. You woke alert, ready to respond. And if there was danger, if you woke to find a predator nearby, or discovered that your group had been approached by a rival tribe, that cortisol surge gave you the energy and focus to react immediately. You could fight, flee, or take defensive action without delay. The morning cortisol awakening response was a survival adaptation, preparing you for the fact that waking up might mean facing an immediate threat. But in the modern world, this adaptation has become a source of suffering. You're not waking to check for predators. You're not assessing physical threats. You're waking to traffic, emails, deadlines, responsibilities, and a mind that immediately starts cataloging everything you're worried about. Your cortisol spikes just the same, preparing you for danger. But the danger isn't physical, it's psychological, and there's no action you can take to resolve it. So you lie there, heart pounding, mind racing, flooded with stress hormones that have nowhere to go. Your body is primed for action, but you're just lying in bed. The mismatch between your physiological state and your actual circumstances creates a sensation of free-floating anxiety, fear without an object, dread without a clear cause. You feel awful, but you can't point to a specific reason why. This morning anxiety is worse for people who are already under chronic stress. When your baseline cortisol levels are elevated throughout the day due to ongoing stressors, your morning spike becomes even more pronounced. Instead of rising from a low nighttime baseline, your cortisol is rising from an already elevated level. The result is an awakening that feels less like gently coming to consciousness and more like being jolted into panic. Your brain also plays a role in amplifying this response. The amygdala, your threat detection center, is particularly active in the morning. It's scanning for dangers, real or imagined, trying to identify what you should be worried about. And in the absence of actual physical threats, it latches on to whatever psychological concerns are available. Work stress, relationship problems, health worries, financial anxiety. Your amygdala finds something to be afraid of, and your cortisol spike reinforces that fear, creating a feedback loop of morning dread. This is also why some people wake at 3 or 4 in the morning and can't fall back asleep. It's not just insomnia. It's a premature cortisol surge. Your body's circadian rhythm is slightly off, triggering the awakening response too early. You wake in the middle of the night with cortisol flooding your system, your heart rate elevated, your mind immediately active. And because it's still dark, because you know you should be sleeping, the anxiety intensifies. You worry about not sleeping, which raises your stress further, which keeps your cortisol high, which prevents you from falling back asleep. For your ancestors, waking in the middle of the night was normal and often necessary. They slept in biphasic or polyphasic patterns, with periods of wakefulness between sleep cycles. These wakeful periods allowed them to check their surroundings, tend the fire, or simply rest quietly before returning to sleep. There was no anxiety about it because it was expected. It was part of the natural rhythm of sleep. But you've been taught that sleep should be continuous, that waking in the middle of the night means something is wrong. So when it happens, you panic. You check the clock. You calculate how many hours of sleep you've lost. You worry about how tired you'll be tomorrow, and all of that worry triggers more cortisol, which makes falling back asleep even harder. What should be a brief, neutral awakening becomes a source of stress that can last for hours. The morning cortisol awakening response is also influenced by what you expect when you wake. If you wake up dreading your day, if you immediately start thinking about everything that's stressful or difficult ahead, your cortisol spike becomes more extreme. Your brain is responding to your own thoughts as if they were real threats. It's preparing you to face those challenges with the same physiological response your ancestors used to face predators. This is why the first thoughts and actions after waking matter so much. If you immediately reach for your phone and start scrolling through news, emails, or social media, you're feeding your brain information that amplifies the stress response. You're confirming to your amygdala that yes, there are threats, there are problems, there are reasons to be anxious. Your cortisol remains elevated, your sympathetic nervous system stays activated, and you start your day in a state of stress that's difficult to shake. Conversely, if you can wake more gently, if you can give yourself a buffer between consciousness and stimulation, your cortisol spike is more manageable. Taking a few slow breaths, stretching gently, allowing yourself a moment of stillness before engaging with the demands of the day. These simple actions signal to your brain that you're safe, that there's no immediate threat, that the cortisol surge can subside naturally without escalating into full anxiety. Light also plays a crucial role. Remember, your circadian rhythm is reset by morning light. When you expose your eyes to bright light shortly after waking, preferably natural sunlight, you're telling your suprachiasmatic nucleus that this is the beginning of the day. This helps regulate your cortisol pattern, ensuring that it rises appropriately in the morning and declines throughout the day. Without that light exposure, your cortisol rhythm can become dysregulated, spiking at inappropriate times or remaining elevated when it should be declining. For your ancestors, morning light was automatic. The sun rose, light flooded their environment, and their circadian rhythms synchronized naturally. But you might wake up in darkness, go through your morning routine under artificial light, and not see real daylight until much later. Your cortisol awakening response happens, but without the light cue to properly anchor it, your body isn't sure what time of day it really is. Your stress response becomes untethered from the natural rhythms that should govern it. The difference between a healthy cortisol awakening response and morning anxiety is subtle but important. A healthy response gives you energy and alertness without fear. You wake feeling ready to engage with the day, alert but not agitated, energized but not anxious. An unhealthy response floods you with stress hormones that create fear, dread, and a sense of being overwhelmed before your day has even begun. And the cumulative effect of waking this way, day after day, is profound. You start each morning already depleted, already stressed, already in fight or flight mode. You never get a calm, centered beginning. You're always playing catch-up, trying to calm a nervous system that started the day in overdrive. And by the time evening comes, when you should be winding down, your system is so exhausted from the constant activation that it doesn't know how to relax. You're wired and tired, simultaneously overstimulated and depleted. So when you wake up feeling anxious, when your heart is racing before you've even remembered where you are, understand this. It's not weakness. It's not your fault. It's an ancient survival mechanism trying to protect you from dangers that no longer exist. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do, waking you quickly and preparing you for threat. But the threats it's preparing you for are memories now, echoes of a world where mornings could mean life or death. And that brings us to the heart of the matter. Because every struggle we've explored tonight, every restless night and anxious morning, stems from the same fundamental problem. Your body is ancient, but your world is not. We've traveled through the biology of sleep together tonight, and if you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed a pattern. Every system we've discussed, your threat detection, your response to darkness, your hypervigilance, your circadian rhythm, your need for temperature drops and social proximity, your gut-brain connection, your restlessness, your morning cortisol surge, all of them were designed for a world that no longer exists. And that's the core of the problem. Your body is running software written 50,000 years ago, but you're trying to use it in an environment it was never designed for. This is called evolutionary mismatch, or evolutionary lag. It's the gap between how quickly human culture has changed and how slowly human biology evolves. Culture can transform in decades or even years. New technologies, new social structures, new ways of living can emerge within a single generation. But biology? Biology changes over thousands or millions of years, shaped by the slow, patient forces of natural selection. Your body evolved in the Pleistocene epoch, a period that lasted from about 2.6 million years ago to roughly 12,000 years ago. For the vast majority of that time, humans lived as hunter-gatherers in small, mobile groups. They spent their days outdoors, moving constantly, exposed to natural light cycles, surrounded by their social group, eating whole foods when they could find them, and sleeping in darkness with real physical threats nearby. That was the environment that shaped your biology, Every system in your body, every instinct, every automatic response was calibrated for that world. And it worked. Those systems kept your ancestors alive. They detected real threats. They responded to genuine dangers. They synchronized with actual environmental rhythms. Your biology is not broken, it's just ancient. And it has no idea what to make of the modern world. Consider light. For millions of years, humans had two sources of light, the sun and fire. The sun was bright, blue-rich, and signaled daytime. Fire was dim, orange, and signaled evening. Your circadian rhythm evolved to respond to these cues perfectly. Bright blue light meant wake up, be alert, suppress melatonin. Dim orange light meant wind down, prepare for sleep, release melatonin. Simple, reliable, predictable. Then, in the blink of an evolutionary eye, you invented electric lighting. Suddenly, you could create daylight-level brightness at midnight. You could flood your bedroom with blue wavelengths right before sleep. You could spend your entire day indoors under artificial light that's too dim to fully wake you, but too bright to let you rest. Your circadian rhythm, expecting clear signals, receives chaos instead. It doesn't know whether it's day or night, whether you should be alert or asleep, so it does both poorly. Or consider food. Your ancestors ate when food was available, which wasn't always. They might feast after a successful hunt, then fast for days. They ate whole foods, nothing processed, nothing refined. Their bodies evolved to handle irregular eating patterns and to extract maximum nutrition from whatever they consumed. Hunger was a normal part of life, not a problem to solve immediately. But you have access to food 24 hours a day. You can eat whenever you want, whatever you want, as much as you want, and you do. You eat late at night. You snack constantly. You consume foods your body has never encountered before, hyperpalatable combinations of sugar, salt, and fat that didn't exist in nature. Your digestive system, expecting the rhythms and contents of an ancestral diet, struggles to process this constant influx of novel substances. It sends distress signals. Your gut-brain axis activates stress responses, and your sleep suffers. Is less than #0. 7 hash is greater than. Think about movement. Your ancestors walked an estimated 8 to 15 kilometers per day, roughly 5 to 9 miles. They climbed, carried, dug, built, and ran. Movement was constant, varied, and necessary. Their bodies were strong, flexible, and tired by nightfall. Sleep came easily because their muscles had worked, their cardiovascular systems had been challenged, and their bodies had earned rest. You might walk from your car to your desk and back again. Maybe you get a few thousand steps if you're intentional about it. Your body barely moves all day. Your muscles aren't challenged. Your cardiovascular system isn't engaged. And then you wonder why you don't feel tired at night, why your body won't settle into stillness, why rest doesn't come naturally. Your body is confused. If you haven't moved, why would you need to rest? Consider social connection. Your ancestors lived in groups of 20 to 150 individuals. They knew everyone. They slept near each other. They shared resources, responsibilities, and vigilance. Loneliness, in the way you experience it, barely existed. Social isolation meant death, so humans evolved to crave proximity, to feel safest when surrounded by their tribe. But you might live alone, sleep alone, work alone. Spend your evenings scrolling through a phone, seeing hundreds of faces but connecting with none of them. Your body, expecting the warmth and presence of others, receives only absence, Your amygdala never gets the signal that someone else is keeping watch, that you're part of a group, that it's safe to let your guard down. So you remain vigilant, even in complete safety, because your biology can't tell the difference between being alone by choice and being dangerously isolated. Think about stress. Your ancestors faced acute stressors, predators, rival groups, injuries, storms, food scarcity. These stressors were intense but time-limited. The threat appeared, they responded, the threat passed. Their stress hormones surged, then declined. Their bodies returned to baseline. The system worked because it was designed for brief emergencies. You face chronic stressors, work pressure, financial worry, relationship tension, health concerns, information overload, existential uncertainty about the future. These stresses never fully resolve. They layer on top of each other. They follow you everywhere. Your stress hormones remain elevated constantly. Your sympathetic nervous system never fully stands down. Your body interprets this chronic activation as ongoing danger, and it responds the way it always has, by keeping you alert, vigilant, and unable to sleep deeply. Consider noise. Your ancestors lived in environments where nighttime was relatively quiet. Natural sounds, wind, water, animal calls, these were familiar and non-threatening. Sudden, unexpected sounds were rare and usually signaled danger. Your threat detection system evolved to ignore familiar patterns and respond to anomalies. But you live surrounded by noise. Cars at all hours, sirens, neighbors, airplanes, notifications. Your environment is full of sudden, unexpected, irregular sounds. Each one triggers a micro-response in your amygdala. Each one pulls you slightly toward wakefulness. Your brain never fully settles because it's constantly processing auditory information, trying to determine whether any of these sounds represent threats. Think about information. Your ancestors' world was small and knowable. They understood their environment. They knew the people around them. Information came slowly, through direct experience and oral tradition. Their brains evolved to process this limited, local information effectively. You're bombarded with information constantly, news from across the world, crises you can't influence, problems you can't solve, opinions from thousands of strangers. Your brain tries to process all of it, tries to determine what's relevant and what's threatening, but the volume is overwhelming. Your amygdala sees threat after threat after threat. Your stress response activates repeatedly. And by the time you try to sleep, your mind is still churning through it all, trying to make sense of information it was never designed to handle. Consider temperature. Your ancestors slept in environments where nighttime temperatures naturally dropped. Their bodies expected this cooling, used it as a cue for sleep. They didn't have climate control. They worked with their environment, not against it. You can maintain any temperature you want, anytime. You heat your home in winter to temperatures that feel comfortable while you're active but are too warm for sleep. You cool it in summer, but often not enough because energy costs or comfort preferences keep it warmer than ideal. Your body is trying to cool itself for sleep, but your environment isn't cooperating. The signal your biology is looking for never comes clearly. This is the mismatch. Not a single dramatic incompatibility, but hundreds of small ones, each creating friction between what your body expects and what your life provides. Your circadian rhythm expects clear light-dark cycles but receives constant artificial illumination. Your stress response expects brief emergencies but faces chronic activation.
Your social brain expects proximity but experiences isolation. Your digestive system expects rhythmic eating but receives constant grazing. Your muscles expect movement but get stillness. Your threat detection expects occasional danger but perceives constant threat. Every single system we've explored tonight is trying to do its job, trying to keep you alive and safe, trying to function the way it was designed. But the world has changed so quickly, so dramatically, that these ancient systems are constantly confused, constantly triggered, constantly sending signals that made sense 50,000 years ago but create suffering today. And here's the thing, you can't change your biology. You can't update your amygdala or reprogram your circadian rhythm or convince your gut-brain axis that modern life is safe. These systems are ancient, embedded deep in your physiology, beyond the reach of conscious control or willpower. No amount of wanting to sleep better will make your body stop responding to darkness as danger or stop spiking cortisol when you wake. But understanding this, really understanding it, changes something important. It shifts the story you tell yourself about your sleep struggles. You're not broken, you're not weak, you're not doing something wrong. You're just ancient, trying to rest in a world your body doesn't recognize, navigating modern life with prehistoric instincts. And maybe, just maybe, that understanding is the first step toward finding peace with the body you have and the world you live in. So, here we are. We've traveled through the biology of your ancient body, explored the systems that keep you awake when you desperately want to sleep, and uncovered the fundamental mismatch between the world you evolved for and the world you actually live in. And maybe you're lying there thinking, what now? If my biology is ancient and unchangeable, if the modern world is incompatible with my instincts, if all of these systems are working exactly as designed but producing suffering instead of safety, then what am I supposed to do? The answer isn't to fix yourself. You're not broken. The answer is to work with your biology instead of against it, to give your ancient body the signals it's looking for, even if you have to create them artificially in a world that no longer provides them naturally. Start with darkness, real darkness. Your circadian rhythm needs clear signals, and the most powerful signal is the transition from light to dark. In the evening, dim your lights. Use warm-toned bulbs, the ones that mimic firelight rather than daylight. Put your screens away at least an hour before bed, or if you must use them, enable night mode to reduce blue light exposure. Let your environment gradually darken, giving your brain the cue it evolved to recognize. The day is ending, melatonin production can begin, sleep is approaching. And, in the morning, do the opposite. Get bright light, preferably natural sunlight, within the first hour of waking. Go outside if you can. Stand by a window. Let that light hit your eyes and reset your circadian clock. Tell your suprachiasmatic nucleus, this is morning, this is the start of the active day. Cortisol should peak now and decline later. Give your body the anchors it needs to maintain a rhythm that makes sense. Create coolness. Your body needs to drop its core temperature to initiate sleep, so help it. Keep your bedroom cool, somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit if possible. Use breathable bedding. Take a warm bath or shower 90 minutes before bed to trigger the cooling response afterward. Let your body experience the temperature gradient it's expecting, the signal that has meant nighttime for millions of years. Move your body. Not as punishment, not as another task on your to-do list, but as a gift to the ancient system that's trying so hard to serve you. Walk, stretch, climb stairs, carry things. Give your muscles something to do during the day so they're ready to rest at night. Your ancestors moved for survival. You'll have to move intentionally, but the effect is the same. A body that has worked is a body that can rest. Create boundaries around eating. Give your digestive system a rhythm it recognizes. Eat during daylight hours when your body expects food. Stop eating several hours before bed, giving your system time to complete digestion before you ask it to sleep. Let your body experience the gentle fasting period that signals nighttime, that tells your gut-brain axis it's safe to shift into rest mode. Seek proximity. If you sleep better with a partner or a pet nearby, honor that. Your biology craves the presence of others. It interprets solitude as danger. You don't have to sleep in a group of 30 people around a fire, but a single companion, even a sleeping dog, can provide the social safety cue your amygdala is searching for. And if you live alone, consider white noise or ambient sounds that mimic breathing and gentle movement, the auditory cues of not being isolated. Practice stillness gradually. Your body resists sudden immobility, so don't force it. Wind down slowly. Stretch gently before bed. Release the tension your muscles have accumulated. Give your nervous system permission to discharge the restlessness it's carrying. And if you need to shift positions during the night, do it without judgment. Your ancestors moved during sleep. Stillness was never absolute. Perfect immobility is a modern expectation, not a biological requirement. Activate your parasympathetic nervous system intentionally. Your body won't shift out of fight or flight mode on its own, not in a world of chronic stress. So practice the behaviors that trigger the rest and digest response. Breathe slowly and deeply, extending your exhales. Hum or sing quietly, stimulating your vagus nerve. Gentle stretching, progressive muscle relaxation, any practice that signals safety to your autonomic nervous system. You're manually overriding the sympathetic activation that your environment keeps triggering. Protect your mornings. When you wake, resist the urge to immediately engage with stress. Don't reach for your phone. Don't check email or news. Give yourself a buffer, even just 5 or 10 minutes, where you can exist without feeding your amygdala new information to worry about. Let your cortisol awakening response happen without amplifying it into full anxiety. Breathe, stretch, move slowly into your day rather than being ambushed by it. Accept the middle of the night awakenings. If you wake at 2 or 3 or 4 a.m., remember that this is normal. Your ancestors woke between sleep cycles. The goal isn't to never wake, it's to return to sleep without panic. Don't check the time. Don't calculate hours lost. Don't spiral into anxiety about being awake. Just breathe, rest quietly. Trust that your body will return to sleep when it's ready. The anxiety about not sleeping is often worse than the waking itself. Understand that you can't eliminate all mismatch. You live in the modern world. You can't return to the ancestral environment. You can't undo electricity or abandon your responsibilities or opt out of contemporary life. But you can create islands of compatibility, moments and practices where you give your ancient body what it needs. Darkness when it expects darkness. Coolness when it needs coolness. Movement when it craves movement. Safety cues when it's scanning for threats. And perhaps most importantly, practice compassion for yourself. When you lie awake, when your heart races for no clear reason, when you can't stop your mind from churning, when your body won't settle into stillness, remember that you're not failing. You're not weak or broken or doing something wrong. You're a human being with an ancient body trying to navigate a modern world. Every system that's keeping you awake is trying to protect you. Your amygdala is watching for danger. Your circadian rhythm is confused by conflicting signals. Your stress response is activated by threats it can't distinguish from the lions that used to hunt your ancestors. These systems aren't your enemy. They're trying to keep you alive. They just don't understand that the world has changed, that the threats are different now, that survival no longer requires constant vigilance. So when they activate inappropriately, when they keep you awake despite your exhaustion, meet them with understanding rather than frustration. Thank them for trying to protect you. Then, gently, patiently, give them the signals they need to stand down. Your sleep struggles are not a personal failing. They're a mismatch between biology and environment, between ancient programming and modern life. And while you can't change your biology, you can work with it. You can create conditions that honor your evolutionary needs. You can build a life that, even in small ways, gives your body the cues it's searching for: darkness, coolness, movement, social connection, rhythmic eating, parasympathetic activation, safety. Will this solve everything? Maybe not. Some nights will still be hard. Some mornings will still arrive with anxiety. Your body will still carry its ancient fears into your modern bedroom. But understanding why, knowing that your sleeplessness has roots in survival instincts that kept your ancestors alive, that can transform suffering into something more bearable. It can shift blame into compassion. It can turn frustration into patience. You're not failing at sleep. You're succeeding at survival. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And now that you understand it, now that you see the ancient logic behind your modern struggles, maybe you can stop fighting your biology and start working with it. Not to fix yourself, because you were never broken, but to create the conditions where your ancient body can finally, peacefully, do what it's been trying to do all along: rest. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember this: you are the descendant of the most successful warriors, the most vigilant sleepers, the most cautious ancestors. Every restless moment, every racing thought, every middle-of-the-night awakening is proof that your lineage survived when others didn't. Your body still thinks you live in the wild, and maybe, just maybe, that's not something to fight. It's something to honor, to understand, and to finally make peace with. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight. If you found this helpful, if understanding your ancient body brought you any comfort, consider subscribing. And sleep well, knowing that you're not broken, you're just beautifully, stubbornly ancient, and that's exactly as it should be. We started tonight with a simple question: why does your body still think you live in the wild? And now, after traveling through the biology of sleep together, after exploring your threat detection system, your response to darkness, your hypervigilance, your circadian rhythms, your temperature regulation, your hunger signals, your need for social connection, your startle responses, your sleep architecture, your fight or flight system, your gut-brain axis, your restlessness, and your morning cortisol surge, the answer should be clear. Your body thinks you live in the wild because, in every way that matters biologically, you still do. The world has changed. The threats have changed. The environment has changed. But you haven't. Not really. Not in the deep, cellular, evolutionary sense. You're still running the same software your ancestors ran 50,000 years ago. The same amygdala scanning for predators. The same circadian clock expecting sunrise and sunset. the same stress hormones preparing you to fight or flee, the same gut sending signals about safety and danger, the same muscles craving movement, the same social brain seeking proximity and connection. Every system we've explored tonight is ancient, refined over millions of years of evolution, optimized for a world where survival required constant vigilance, where sleep was genuinely dangerous, where every sound in the darkness could be your last warning. These systems kept your ancestors alive. They detected real threats. They responded to genuine dangers. They synchronized with actual environmental rhythms. And they worked beautifully, perfectly, exactly as designed. But that world is gone. The threats your body is preparing for no longer exist. The predators are extinct. The dangers are different. And yet your biology keeps watching, keeps listening, keeps preparing, because it has no way of knowing that the world has changed. It can't update its programming. It can't adapt to modern life within your lifetime, or even within 1,000 lifetimes. Evolution moves slowly. Culture moves quickly. And you're caught in the middle, an ancient being trying to rest in a world it doesn't recognize. This is why you lie awake at night despite being exhausted, why your heart races in response to emails instead of lions, why darkness still makes you uneasy even when you're objectively safe, why you can't sleep deeply when you're alone, why your stomach churns when you're anxious, why you can't stay still, why you wake up afraid. It's all the same story. Your body is trying to protect you using tools designed for a different world. And those tools, while no longer appropriate, are still powerful, still automatic, still impossible to override through willpower alone. But here's what's important. Understanding this changes something fundamental. It transforms the way you relate to your sleep struggles. Because once you see that your sleeplessness isn't a personal failing, once you understand that it's an evolutionary mismatch, once you recognize that every system keeping you awake is actually trying to keep you alive, the shame dissolves, the frustration softens, the self-judgment loses its power. You're not broken, you're not weak, you're not doing anything wrong, you're just ancient. And your ancient body, beautiful and stubborn and perfectly designed for a world that no longer exists, is doing exactly what it was built to do. It's protecting you, watching over you, keeping you safe from dangers it still believes are real. And while that protection now manifests as anxiety instead of survival, while that vigilance now prevents rest instead of death, the intention remains the same. Your body loves you. It's trying to save you. It just doesn't understand that you no longer need saving in the ways it knows how to provide. So what do you do with this understanding? You meet your body with compassion instead of criticism. When your amygdala sounds an alarm at 3 a.m, you don't berate it for being irrational. You thank it for trying to protect you, then gently remind it that you're safe. When your circadian rhythm is confused by artificial light, you don't blame yourself for living in the modern world. You simply give it clearer signals. Darkness when it expects darkness. Light when it expects light. When your gut sends distress signals that trigger anxiety, you don't judge the connection. You honor it by supporting both your digestive health and your emotional well-being. You work with your biology instead of against it. You create the conditions your ancient body is searching for. Even if you have to manufacture them artificially, you give it coolness, you give it darkness, you give it movement, you give it social cues, you give it rhythmic eating patterns, you give it parasympathetic activation through breath and stillness, you give it gentle mornings without immediate stress. You give it permission to wake between cycles without panic. You give it understanding. And slowly, gradually, as you provide these signals consistently, your body begins to trust. Not completely, not perfectly. Your amygdala will still sound false alarms. Your stress response will still activate inappropriately. Your circadian rhythm will still struggle with modern light, but the intensity softens, the frequency decreases. The suffering becomes more bearable because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer treating your sleep struggles as evidence of personal inadequacy. You're recognizing them for what they are: ancient adaptations trying to function in a modern context. This is the gift of understanding. Not perfect sleep, not the elimination of all struggle, but a shift in perspective that transforms suffering into something you can work with. Your sleeplessness becomes less about what's wrong with you and more about what's wrong with the mismatch between your biology and your environment. And that's something you can address not by fixing yourself, but by honoring your evolutionary needs in whatever small ways modern life allows. Remember the question we started with. That restless feeling when you're trying to fall asleep. That sudden jolt of anxiety at unexpected sounds. That racing heart when nothing is threatening you. Now you know what that is. It's your body. Still living in the wild, still watching for predators, still protecting you with instincts that were forged in darkness and danger and the constant possibility of death. Those instincts are obsolete now. But they're also the reason you're here. They're the reason your ancestors survived long enough to become your ancestors. They're the price of your existence. So tonight, when you close your eyes, when you try once again to convince your ancient body that it's safe to let go, remember this. You are not failing at sleep, you are succeeding at survival. Every system that keeps you awake is a system that kept your ancestors alive. Every restless moment is proof that your lineage was vigilant enough to survive when others weren't. Every middle of the night awakening is evidence that your family tree is made up of the most cautious, most careful, most protective humans who ever lived. Your body still thinks you live in the wild, and in a strange, beautiful, stubborn way, it always will. But now you understand why. Now you know what it's trying to do. And now you can work with it, honor it, and gently, patiently give it the signals it needs to finally, peacefully rest. Not by changing who you are, but by accepting what you are. Ancient, vigilant, perfectly designed for a world that's gone, and doing your best to find peace in the world that remains. If this journey through your biology has helped you understand yourself a little better, if seeing the ancient logic behind your modern struggles has brought you any comfort or clarity, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to this channel. There are more stories like this, more explorations of the beautiful, stubborn ways your body tries to keep you alive. And if you'd like to share, leave a comment about which biological system you recognized most in yourself. Was it the amygdala's constant scanning, the circadian confusion, the gut-brain connection, the restlessness? I read every comment, and your reflections help shape what we explore next. And here's a gentle challenge for tonight. As you prepare for sleep, choose just one ancient signal to honor. Maybe it's dimming your lights an hour early. Maybe it's taking a few deep breaths to activate your parasympathetic system. Maybe it's allowing yourself to wake in the night without checking the clock or spiraling into worry. Just one signal. One small acknowledgement of what your body needs. Not to fix everything, but to begin the conversation between your ancient biology and your modern life. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having the courage to look honestly at why rest feels so hard. You're not alone in this struggle. Every human being with these ancient bodies is navigating the same mismatch, the same evolutionary lag, the same beautiful, frustrating gap between who we are and where we live. Sleep well tonight, if you can. And if you can't, if your body keeps you awake with its ancient fears and protective instincts, at least now you know why. At least now you understand. And sometimes, understanding is the first step toward peace. Your body still thinks you live in the wild. But you don't have to fight it anymore. You just have to listen, honor, and gently guide it home to rest. Good night.